This is Brother Ron, and welcome to We All Be News Radio and TV, the news-free Dixie for the 21st century.
We All Be is honored to have on the one and only Dr. GREgory, really the gatekeeper and visionary behind establishing the living legacy of his father, Baba Dick Gregory, the one and only, after his passing just several months ago, August 19th, 2017.
Yes.
Yeah, how you doing today, sir?
Good. And some folks find that to actually better than good, doing fantastic. The exhibit that I saw you at just the other day was heartwarming and uplifting. And the reality is, the life cycle. We know at some point all of us are going to leave this earth. Most of us don't get the love, the layers, the insulation that us Gregorys have received. It really has been just absolutely phenomenal, man. Between Joe Morton's off-Broadway play, between interviews like we're doing now, there's films, there's books, it's just so many things that are just continuing and insulating the legacy. And it's just an honor, man. It's an honor to have a front row seat and be able to tweak some things from time to time, but the legacy is bigger than any one individual. So I'm playing my role as a caretaker of it and a custodian of it, and I'm crystal clear on that.
That's excellent. Who are you, Dr. Christian Gregory? You're a man of many accomplishments, and you got complexities to you as well. Like, can you explain to the audience who you are?
So I'm a chiropractor here in Washington, D.C. For the last 22 years, I've ran Washington Spine and Disc, which is a large multidisciplinary healthcare, physical medicine, neurology, and physical therapy chiropractic center. So keeps me busy. Out of that operation, which was very close to where my dad resided, is where I managed or micromanaged, because no one manages Dick Gregory, where I micromanaged Dick Gregory and made suggestions. And so it's to have a front row seat as someone who historically has been an incredibly hard worker and a phenomenal listener. It's just been an incredible ride, man. It continues to be, because I still, I've taught most of the folks who were at my dad's funeral, I talked to them regularly. 7,000 folks came. Probably 3,000 of them thought they were Dick Gregory's best friend. Right. Despite the fact in the last 20 years of being shoulder to shoulder with them, constantly, I never heard of them, didn't know their name, but they were pointing in my chest, explaining to me who they were. So that's never a spirit or energy my dad had. My dad was always so accessible. So to see people who were kind of off the radar screen puff up like, hey, wait a minute, I need front row. So, would you like me to move Mrs. Gregory so you can sit there since you're so important? No, it was a character builder, and if it was any other way, I would have thought it was a setup, man. Right. So I've listened to my pops for so many generations be a multi-generational truth teller. And a lot of people say, well, wait a minute. Well, with all the wild conspiracy theories, with all the things, any true truth teller knows just the scientific theory is how you derive at a truth. And so my pop, as a self-described agitator, it wasn't his job. He wasn't your teacher. He's not a scientist. His job was to motivate you to go out and do your homework, just like a college professor, but they don't tell you the answers. They give you the setup. And from the setup, you got to piece it together. And that truth, and it's a funny thing, because there is a scale of truth. I could be hot in here, you could be cold. Neither of us are lying. Part of it, it's relative. So you have to find your truth. And the amount of folks who walk up to me regularly and say, and when they find out who I am, wow, your father's the reason I went to medical school. Your father's the reason I went to law school. Not just the reason I went, he also paid for me to go. There was a relationship my dad had with most of the HBCUs. So all the historically black colleges and universities, when there was a talented student that was in trouble financially, Dick Gregory was the first person they would reach out and tap. And frequently, he wrote the check for these folks to go to law school, to go to medical school. So he didn't just talk, and he never wanted a pat on the back. I had to find out about this randomly from folks on the street. I said, well, what do you mean my pop paid for you to go to? Oh, well, this is why. And I was like, there's so, in his, my pop was 84, got into activism almost accidentally. This was before the civil rights movement. When he was involved in activism in St. Louis, it was normally for things where he was slighted or wrong, that he never had a problem pointing in the man's chest and demanding and speaking truth to power or perceived power. It wasn't until much later when Sergeant Medgar Evers reached out to him that he made the transition over to a more of a global activism, not just, hey, I'm looking out for me and my family and my friends, but no, I'm looking out for humanity. So when he was just doing his thing, being a truth teller, not afraid, there were so many things then that had he deviated slightly, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about him right now. The lack of fear and the clarity was so unique. And it was such a blessing to be right next to it, watch it, and it didn't matter who was in the room. People would say, oh, he's just talking that way because it's black folks at the table. Right. Wrong. It doesn't matter, much to my embarrassment on occasion, because my skin clearly is not as thick as his. Oh, he'll light a room up. He'll light a table up. He'll light a car up. It doesn't matter who's in there. I've never seen him bow down to anyone. And not in a disrespectful way. He's just going to speak his mind. So multi-generational truth teller. It's in the genes too. So you got the genes, you got the proper nutrition that he raised us all on a farm at. So all the ingredients were put in as early for us Gregorys to be focused and activist ourselves. And we all of our activism, some of it healthcare activism, some of it's legal activism, it's all different, but it's there. And that's just the wonderful blessings, because it's plural, because they were just blessings upon blessings, and to have the clarity of mind. So many of his contemporaries, so many of his friends, the 60s and 70s were a dangerous time, didn't make it. So for me to see my pop, born in 1932, survive all of the generational hits that could have taken him out, and to see him at the, chronologically he was 84, biologically the brother was like 120. You think about running across the country twice. We don't think about these things. All of the fasting, the sacrifice, literal sacrifice, nutritional sacrifice, that does real damage, real harm to the body. So it was, 84, that's not, well, Brother Dick did all the nutrition. He's only lived to 84. It's a disservice just to look at his chronological age. You have to look at the life he lived, and easily the man was 110. So for me to be handed a death certificate that said natural causes on it, that was a wonderful, it's an odd thing to say, but you welled up with tears of pride to say, all right, because as he got older, we had close calls with him driving, we had close calls with him falling. You read the piece I wrote about No Country for Old Legends. In watching and witnessing, whether it's Pop's at the ATM machine, having a hard time with the technology, seeing young folks behind him get restless, maybe say something, because I always stood back and just until I needed to step in, right. And then he'd turn around and be, oh, so that's Dick Gregory. So, well, all of these elders are somebody. And so just to slow down, because we have such a fast digital tempo, and say, we're going to be there someday. If we're fortunate, if we're blessed, we take care of ourselves and it's in the stars, we're going to be there someday. And it's important that we're mindful of that. And we show folks, and my pop would always say, honor thy father, honor thy mother if they are honorable. You can't judge the honor of someone's lifespan in who they are as an 84-year-old man or woman. So we need to honor them just for the, hey, it's like when someone's on crutches, someone's in a wheelchair, we give them a bigger berth to say, hey, we want to make sure you have all the space, because this could be us someday. And so that respect, you put out there in the ether what you want to come back to you. And watching my pop do that for a lifetime. Sometimes he could go from 84 to 18 on you in a nanosecond, then right back to 92. So it was an interesting ride, that's for certain, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the way he died, what happened to him, because I think people don't understand. He kept up a rigorous touring schedule as well too. I mean, he's flying all the time and going
hard on the body. Hard on the body.
Yeah.
And so this is I want to get into this a little deeper.
So yeah, we'll pick up where you live about Dick and what happened to him.
So I managed my dad's social media profiles, and so frequently, like when he was on the Breakfast Club, he said, "I'm out on social media." Technically, he wasn't. I would capture the moments, capture the statements, put them there, like many folks his age. My dad had a smartphone, but it was difficult just to get him to turn it on and turn it off. He struggled with that at times. And he would literally be pressing so hard because he thought the button was behind the glass to get to. So it was, but I mean, when you think about it, someone who was born in a home that didn't even have a landline to now in his pocket have more computing power in his pocket than the entire city he grew up in. That's just a wild concept. I mean, most of us grew up analog, and some are still stuck there. Some of us transitioned over to digital. Some of us are fully digital. And it's interesting. It depends how vested you are with your interest. But for my pop, it was, I'm not gonna say devastating, but it was sad for him when he realized that payphones weren't gonna be around anymore, because most people would say, oh, I bet you he was in the payphone. He was like Clark Kent before Clark Kent. He loved payphones. My pop could be in a payphone for 3 hours, and we're sitting in the car just waiting for him to come and think nothing open. That was like his office. That was his closed space office. When you grew up in a home with so many siblings and as poor as my dad was, to have your own little sequestered space was, I mean, my dad loved being in elevators. He would always say, hey, last free ride in America. Just to have a closed in space to do him, and have, for however long folks were stuck in that elevator, he had a captive audience. And many of these folks weren't typical Dick Gregory audience members. So he had his opportunity to try out new material and see how it would go over a more diverse crowd. But when my dad first started showing signs of the disease that ultimately killed him, vascular disease, was probably 15 plus years ago. He started showing soft signs. So just to be real clear, my dad's heart was incredibly strong. The blood vessels throughout his body had started to turn almost into tissue paper. So if he sneezed too hard, if he coughed too hard, he could have little tiny tears, little aneurysms. My dad had about 22 little tiny strokes that he had in his cerebrum. So he had cerebral vascular disease. The cerebrum is the smallest part, the control center within the brain. The blood vessels there are so incredibly small and sensitive that they were tearing on him. And so this had been happening, we'd known about this 10 plus years. So that's where some of his dementia was coming from. And so if you remember because you're a Dick Gregory fan, right. Young Dick Gregory was all, when I say young, 50 and younger, was always cool and calm under pressure. You could never ruffle his feathers. But like all of us, we get age and dementia starts to set in, and it can startle us. And we no longer have that filter, and you can go from pleasant to raging in a nanosecond, then right back down. And so if we don't understand health, wellness, and the life cycle, we can be startled by those things. But many of our seniors, you become agitated. Your feet hurt, your back hurt, your neck hurts, your brain's not functioning. You want to get up and run, but your body's not letting you do it. You can only imagine the physiological stress and the emotional stress that puts on the body. So that's not unique to Dick Gregory. Right. The unique part to Dick Gregory, all of the years of not fasting, and you got to be clear, people say, I knew fasting wasn't good for you. Fasting is profoundly good for you. Water's good for you, but if you drink 8 gallons of it a day, you're probably going to die. You can get too much of a good thing. We hear about it occasionally in the summer. Young athletes drink too much water, they deplete their electrolytes, and they die of a heart attack. That's a scientific fact. The fasting that my father was doing wasn't fasting. He was starving himself. So it was starvation. He was hunger striking to bring attention to causes. So the same 60s and 70s, that same movement, that same viciousness that cut down Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Dr. King, that same viciousness, and countless other folks whose name we don't know, that same viciousness ultimately is what killed Dick Gregory. Because all of the starving he did to bring a town, there was time that Pop got to like 80 pounds, man. I mean, it's just, I mean, every rib, and then he would when I was a self-described agitator and also a self-described stuntman. Some would take agitation and stunts are hand in hand, but he mastered both. So after, 60 days with no food, then he'd go and walk a 10K and have him no shirt on, just to show that the human body needed nutrients, not food. So he would take his Dick Gregory's 4X formula, he would start drinking that, and then he would go out and do a 10K with folks having a difficult time. This man who looked emaciated and sickly was setting the tempo that other folks couldn't keep up with. So he didn't just talk it, he sacrificed his own body, and he was clear that's what he was doing. There was no confusion with that. In part of his clarity, when he realized what was happening, he never got upset about it, similar to his cancer diagnosis. So with time, when I was in the hospital for a week before he passed, so the family and his inner circle, his medical team, they were already aware. And I laugh when I say his medical team, because he gave them more medical advice than they ever gave him. It was always just everything was, a simple trip to the post office was colorful, man. It was never a dull moment. When we went into the hospital, my dad, he wasn't even admitted at first. He was evaluated. They realized that his white blood cell levels were alarmingly high. And so they sent him home with some antibiotics. 2 days, and I didn't take him then. My brother and sister took him then, because we just didn't think it was quite that serious. Mm-hmm. So 2 days later, as he wasn't improving, and he should have been, just out of an abundance of caution, we said, all right, well, let's go back to the emergency room. At that point, they evaluated him. White blood cell count had almost doubled. So that was super alarming. But the urine analysis showed that the urinary tract infection had actually improved. So that was some of the confusion. I'm sending messages out through social media platform that where people say, oh, must have been a trick, because they said Brother Dick was getting ready to get out. Mm-hmm. And that's medicine. Medicine's complicated. Being in healthcare over 20 years, the math is far from linear. So you think imaging isn't perfect. It's incredible, some of the advances, but what's truly incredible is the human body. The human body doesn't always tell you what it's up to. So every day, my dad was in the hospital for 7 days before he transitioned, and 6.5 of those days were blissful. We were laughing, we were giggling, phone calls were coming in, because he was a little fatigued and definitely was a little disoriented from the white blood cell count. Whenever your white blood cell count goes that high, it deprives there's only so much blood volume the body can handle. So if we're putting all these white blood cells in here, that means the body has to reduce the red blood cells. That means there's not as much oxygen getting to the brain. So most senior citizens that get infections, they become very disoriented. Sometimes it can be alarmingly so, like you almost think it's mental illness, but truly it's not. It's just it's hypovolemia. They're just not getting enough blood volume to the brain. So there were some episodes of that, but since we understood what it was, then we just gave him his space, protected him so he didn't hurt himself, and allowed him to get through that phase. And he snapped right out of it quickly. Mm-hmm. And so most of the time we were there, oh man, we were giggling, we were laughing, we were having a good old time. They had him up in a big, beautiful suite. 90% of my dad's life, he lived on the road in hotel rooms anyway. So he wasn't jonesing to go home, because he said, "This is wherever I'm at, as long as I got my bags, right, I am home." So you've seen that for the time that you spent with him. So he was quite comfortable. I mean, there was zero pain, zero discomfort, and more laughter than probably should have been coming out of a hospital room. So it was botanical gardens in there. I mean, the amount of folks from all over the world. The hospital CEO was coming in every day to check on them. It was love. It was the polar opposite of what I would imagine a poor black boy in 1932, born into the segregated South, to now have the opposite end of his life cycle, treated like royalty in an all-white hospital. So it was these folks understood him. It wasn't just, someone told them who they were. They brought books. The CEO of the hospital had one of my dad's book. He writes, "I read this in college. Could you sign it for me?" So it was Pop. Pop was always accessible. He lived for that. He would. Now some people, they would go to take a picture and take him, but I didn't understand that your phone is also your camera and other things. So they were just taking the time to get it into camera mode. Yeah, he would snap at some folks, but again, this is AIDS. Hey man, you wasted my time. You playing with. But then after you took the picture, he would still stay and talk to you for an hour. It's like you're in the barbershop and everyone wants to get in front of you. You're the one who really has to rush. And all the brothers that say they have to get their cut and done, then they stay in there afterward for another hour. So I could have been in and out of here. So that's how my pop was. It was always moving fast, but moving incredibly slow when he had a message that you needed to hear. It was divine, man. So there was a week of this divine circle, and it was the true friends, true loved ones, family that were just around him. And my pop never slowed down to reflect. So he was kind of forced because he had an IV in, so I had to slow him down. And so every day it was, you're leaving tomorrow. You're leaving tomorrow. We can release you today, but out of an abundance of caution, Dick, you're a very tricky man. There's something going on here. We're not sure. You could tell. I mean, the hospital was connected with Johns Hopkins, so all of the lab results, I would get them right to my phone. I was waking up at 3 a.m. every day. Like, holy smokes. The white blood cell counts tripled again. It didn't make sense. So it screamed that there was another pocket of infection somewhere in his body that we were missing. And we were thinking it may have been in his central nervous system. So we were doing scans of the brain, we were checking, and it just, everywhere we were turning, and it was some of the most competent medical work I've ever seen. And this is someone that comes from being a healthcare provider for the last 20 years in a city that's very accomplished in healthcare. It was impressive. It was impressive, the level of care and the clarity that they realized they were dealing with someone whose spirit was important and his message was profoundly important. So you felt an extra push, an extra, hey, we would have said, it's like doing CPR on someone, oh, they don't know, and then it's your child. You know what I'm saying? You probably would have stopped hours ago, but so it was that level of care. And this was from janitors to the CEO of the hospital, all the way through. This was the level of focus and concern. And so it was, they sent it out within the system to have some of the other neurologists and radiologists, look at some of the films. And when they realized that what they thought they saw was a pocket just above his heart in his aortic arch. So the heart's like a fist, and like a jumbo straw, you have this big aortic artery come out and arch around. The ejection rate of blood is its highest as it comes out of the heart and it hits that first curve. At the most critical point of the vascular system is where they discovered this massive tear in the artery. So the moment we went from celebration to whispering and telling everyone to get out of the room. Because I was there as they figured it out, and it went from real chill to super dire in a nanosecond. So my pop had sensed it the whole time. Whenever someone would come to me and say, yeah, this isn't what y'all think it is. And he would say stuff like that all the time. So he knew. And once they realized, and they were sending him to do a CT scan, but in order to really, if they were going to surgically correct this, which would have been difficult, if they were going to surgically correct it, they needed to do a CT scan with contrast. By adding that contrast to his bloodstream was going to increase blood volume, which increases blood pressure, and we already have an artery that's a water balloon ready to explode. So there's layers of the arterial wall. So the first part of the wall, the lumen pulled away, and the blood had started filling up behind it. So it's like water getting behind the drywall in your home. You don't see a problem until it is a problem. And so almost like a long Ziploc bag, along about 12 inches long, was this perforated artery, just ready to, and this isn't like a pinhole pop. This is just everything just washes out. And so it became real. It became real fast, because he was already clear, but still there's, the family around you can't overreact, because then blood rate goes up, because then he was such a caring man. He would have been worried for all of us. It's what we call bathroom syndrome. Whenever healthcare providers hear, hey, a senior, what I call seniors, is sick and they're in the bathroom, we get real worried, because that love that we have, well, I don't want my grandchildren to see this. They normally sequester themselves away from others. And so you could kind of see that energy that so he wanted to thin the room out. And that's what we did. We did it immediately because too much stimulation, and you don't want to make other folks sad. But death isn't a sad thing. Well, it can be when it's young and it's premature and it's violent, but when it's on the other end of the spectrum of the life cycle, we have to welcome it. And so at least we have to respect it. If we don't welcome it, we have to respect it. And so that's what makes life so precious, because we don't have it forever. We have to guard it. We have to protect it. We have to eat good, take care of ourselves, mind, body, and soul. And that doesn't mean that doesn't guarantee anything. You can still take good care of yourself and get hit by a truck when you walk out of here today. But the things we can guarantee, at least in our community, blood pressure issues, blood sugar issues, if you don't take care of yourself, your quality of, however long you're here, your quality of life is going to be significantly impacted. Dick Gregory's quality of life was never impacted, even during his cancer. When he had lymphoma, this was back in the mid-90s. I was with him then when he got that. When we got the diagnosis, the oncologist came in the room and read to him what it was. That's the one time I saw the light in my pop's eyes get dim. So we left at about 6 p.m. We left that doctor's office. I drove him back to his house. The whole time we talked, but you knew there was some of that fire, or the whole fire was gone. Dropped him off that night, went to the store to pick him up some things. Got him comfortable. We said, okay, that's the first diagnosis. We're going to have a couple more things we need to do before we figure this thing out. We're going to put together a plan. So we're going to put together a plan. So this was, let's not plan just yet. Let's take a moment to rest so we can be clear and focused as we put this plan together. When I came back early the next morning, my pop and I were always super early risers, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., we were up and moving. Man, boom, 100%. He processed it, made an executive decision with no one's assistance. No, this isn't taking me out. But, you can talk as sheep. Oh, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Someone shivering like a leaf. It was miraculous, man. It was miraculous. In that whole cancer ride, through the treatment all the way through the end, not one point, not one moment did he show an ounce of fear. It was it was incredible, man. It was, people always talk, so, well, my dad's fearless. We're all human. In diagnoses, and especially doing what I do for 20 years, I've seen strong, powerful folks get reduced to mush off of their sudden reality. So even with his cancer treatment, and most of that we went out and did at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. And so we relocated out there for about 6 months. Not everything that's natural is good for you. Cocaine's natural. So, Brother Dick's sick. The folks came out the woodwork, man, with, well, take that. I said, Bob, look, you take all this stuff at the same time, you definitely aren't going to make it. We need to, just because it's natural doesn't mean things have reactions with things. We need to slow down and kind of walk this thing back. And so obviously he survived it. He was a cancer survivor. He never did chemotherapy, never did radiation. They wanted him to, as much to their chagrin, because they definitely wanted him to. He did Rituxan. It was an early variation of gene therapy where they took his white blood cells, centrifuged, and mixed it and grew white blood cells from that to re-inject with a medication back into his body. Gene therapy is somewhat common now. It's common. It wasn't common then. It definitely wasn't common because normally they do it along with chemotherapy. At least at the time, Dick Gregory was the only person who ever got gene therapy with no chemo. He made it crystal clear. Now, here's the genius in that. Any type of chemotherapy typically causes secondary cancer. So if someone's dying of cancer, if we can give you 5 more years, that's a beautiful thing. But 5 years goes by like that. You say, wait, I've lived 5 years, I've lived 10 years. Now I have some new cancer that was brought on by chemotherapy. So chemotherapy many times will cause a secondary cancer, but it's 5-10 years down the road. So we'll deal with that when we get to it. And if that's the option, hey, this is the only way you're going to live, most people say, okay, until 10 years come, then they say, wait a minute, this wasn't the smartest deal that I could have made, but you could have checked out 10 years ago. So you have to keep it in balance. So by my father not doing chemo or radiation, once he was cancer-free, we never had to worry about a thing. Had he done chemo, and I'm not anti-chemo chemo or radiation. That was one of the things we were very careful with, because if Brother Dick says, oh, I'm not doing chemo, I'm not doing radiation, there's a lot of folks that have a whole world of respect for him that would have ripped their pick line out and said, well, I'm not doing, Brother Dick's not doing it, as they went to McDonald's and got, you know, a 20-piece chicken McNugget. So it wasn't just, I'm not doing chemo, I'm doing alternative things that I've done for a lifetime, diet, exercise, all of those things that, so you just can't suddenly pick and choose what you're not going to do. You're either on board or you're not on board. There's a lot of people who are not on board, you know, with a pork chop hanging off their mouth, asking if the apple's organic. So, and my pop used to talk about that all the time. So when we realized what was happening, and he realized that I was clear on what was happening, it was beautiful. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful to live a full life and be clear on what's happening and not be afraid, not be fearful. You know, it's almost like, for me, because my dad was so much more than my dad, but all of my siblings, my dad was our dad, but we had a professional relationship. You know, we were best friends, we were business partners. My dad would call me 10 times a day just to say thank you. I mean, it was you know, we never raised our voice with each other. It was just a mutual respect, because it's like, hey man, I know you're doing what you're doing out of love. There's no paternal agreement that says you have to do what you're doing, because the level of involvement, most people were shocked and say, well, how can you still run a practice and do all that you're doing for your father? And it's like, it wasn't for my father. It was for Dick Gregory. It was for what he meant to, well, if it was just regular son taking care of pop stuff, that would have been easy. I would have been around my dad a fraction of the time that I was around him. It was insulating and protecting his legacy while it was a living legacy. And now that he's passed, it's guarding it with the same fortitude and tenacity that I did while he was alive. Even more so because he's not here to advocate for himself now. So, you know, a lot of folks in his corner who wanted to do more when he was alive, well, now they want to creep up and try to do more now that he's not with us. And, you know, he's communicating. Oh, the amount, I mean, you know, Brother Minister Farrakhan called multiple times, hey, man, you know, I heard from your dad last night. I said, oh, no, he's busy, man. He said, and Farrakhan said, well, I had invited him out to my farm. And, you know, we grew up on a farm. So, you know, the Cosby family had a farm. But I think, you know, black folks, once they made it to a certain extent, were like, hey, I want to get my family sequestered away from the madness a little bit. It was such a blessing to be raised that way. But still you know, we weren't hiding. You know, we were out there on the front line getting arrested right with my dad. So we had the duality of, hey, we're out on the front line, but we also knew that there was a spiritual playground we could always come back to, and it kept us grounded. There were folks that never got that reprieve. They never got to step back to Pleasantville. They were always out there on the front line. So we had that, because as children, it would have been too heavy. And so most of the Gregory children, their spirit is reflective of that, you know, that almost bipolar existence of knowing what's out there, but being able to grow in a healthy, nourished environment. Wow. So when my dad did finally transition, for me, it felt almost like my best friend, who I'm with 24/7, up and relocated to Ghana. Far away. I'm not going to see you every day, but I'm going to hear from him. I'm still hearing from him, and not in a late night spooky blinds or no. He's talking to me right now, man. And it's like, and part of it, if I really was to look at it as a scientist, it's all the seeds that someone plants in your head. You know what they would say at this moment. So really, that's probably what we're hearing. And that might just be me trying to justify it. He might be there, literally right there yelling in my head. Whatever it is, I'm grateful for it. It doesn't throw me off at all. Folks look at me kind of crazy. Sometimes I just start busting out in laughter because I'm hearing something he said. It's like, almost like them people say, oh, what would Jesus do? Frequently, I'm like, what would Dick do? If Pop was here right now, he'd lay you out. And so it is, so it just is, it's wild, man. It just gave me, again, in my practice, I've had patients who have lost spouses, lost children, lost their parents. So I've walked this path with so many other folks as someone who just does a real good job of channeling empathy and connecting with the folks I was caring for. So I've seen it. I've seen there's no matter how much intellectual prowess, how many degrees, losing a parent, you know, you lost mom and dad. So no matter how sick they were, if it was sudden, if it was, truthfully, being around loss for such a long time, the up in age sudden is almost preferred than up in age prolonged. And so I have patients who have been in hospitals, in hospice care, because that's what we thought. We thought if my dad would have made it, he would have been in hospice care the rest of his life. He would have needed pain management the rest of his life. And he would have been on dialysis the rest of his life, because the moment they introduced the contrast with the damage he already had to his kidneys, his kidneys would have never functioned again. So I'm thinking, and this is, this is a spiritual call. This is, I'm just a conduit, man. So it's like, oh, I made this. And said, no. I'm a listener. And so I'm a listener and I'm a channeler. And what we realized is the spiritual Dick Gregory was never going, in a wheelchair, going and getting, oh man, that would have broke the man's spirit more than anyone else to have to say, hey, wait a minute, now I'm over here with the sick folks. That would have killed him. That would have absolutely killed him. So when I look online and I hear folks saying, oh, they must have took Brother Dick out. They must have took, and I say, oh shit, man. Brother Dick would be the main one. My pop would be upset if folks weren't saying that. So I look at it and smile, because if I was on the outside looking in, I would say it too. But truthfully, Dick Gregory could have lived to be 200 years old, and folks would say they finally took out Brother Dick. And so the they that took him out is the collective they, the system that he grew up in, what he was exposed to. Yes, in a sense, it did take him out, but it wasn't someone who tiptoed in with a CIA badge when no one was looking, inject him with a hot shot, and took him out. That I am certain of. And so, but the story, man, I just let I'm a storyteller too, just let the story ride, man. It's like, as long as people aren't being reckless and irresponsible, because there are folks that this country and other countries, powerful folks, take out. We need to be aware of that. So in my father's history, in his life, there were multiple attempts at that. So it would be irresponsible for folks not to question. And especially, I feel kind of guilty because I'm the one who's put the message out. Oh, Brother Dick's doing well. We're going home tomorrow. So hey, this brother must be in on it. So it's wild, man. It's wild. But I can assure the folks who love and appreciate Dick Gregory, it was a peaceful, natural transition. I really hope any of us that have loving relationships with the people in our life are afforded such a luxury for such a peaceful transition. It really was it was a powerful thing. In the last phone call my father had was with Minister Farrakhan. And for me, that was all the eulogy. It was a living eulogy, man. It was the words that were said and how it was received by my dad. Any closure I may have needed, I got before he passed. And that's a beautiful thing, because you get a chance. There was no stone left unturned with me and my pop. And it was never, oh, well, I never got to tell him this. No. We were running out of stuff to talk about. So just to now, myself be 48 years old and not have to, I have no baggage with it. I mean, none. It's most of us have one memory of a parent. Well, that was a difficult point. We got a chance to talk about everything, and our closeness there was no filter. I mean, there was nothing that was out of bounds. I remember I popped up. We'd be in a meeting with you. We'd leave. We had a colorful conversation. We were never about putting people down. It was never about hurting folks. And I used to always explain. So my dad, with his weight loss company, I would work and take care of there was folks there that the family was working with my dad. You had to be at least 500 pounds to even come. So there was people 500 pounds up to Walter Hudson, who was 1,200 pounds. And so, hey, did we ever tell a fat joke? Of course we did. But hey, we're here, feet on the ground, taking care of these folks. Did we tell it to them? Did we hurt them? No. So words are words, man. It's if me and you were walking, me and my pop used to say this all the time. When he would talk about Tiger Woods and say, well, if he was out with some of his white friends and they say, nigger, get on the ground. Who do you think all his friends are expected to get on the ground? He can talk all that. I'm not black. I'm not this. And so we would have this wild conversations. And so, if someone says, hey, nigger, get out the way, that truck's about to hit you. Well, do you stay and get mad about nigger and get hit? Or do you get out the way and deal with the nigger part on the backside? So it was, sometimes we get so emotional and wrapped up. It's like, everyone doesn't have to like, I'm not living my life right if everyone likes me. So we have to, as long as you are not, there's a big difference between prejudice and racism. You can be, we all prejudge, man. But if I'm not stopping you from getting your mortgage, if I'm prejudging you come to my clinic and I say, no, we don't take your insurance, but we really do, I just say it because I don't like your ethnicity, that's racism. You have to have the power to control someone's destiny. You can't do that just being prejudiced. And so some homeless white man out here, as prejudiced as he wants, he's not stopping me from moving on. So when you step in and as a gatekeeper, you say, I'm not going to let the GI Bill. That was racism. When black GIs after World War II were not allowed to participate in the GI Bill, we live in a nation that 90+% of us, our wealth comes from our houses. And so we have generations of folks who, well, first we have slavery, never got that wealth, never benefited from that. Now we have the GI Bill, huge, man, never benefited from it. And then we get to 1980s, whenever, hey, why can't you just catch up? Like, you started the marathon on the 25th mile, I'm starting it on the first mile, you're asking me why I'm breathing heavy. So it's a profound thing to see all that my dad witnessed in his lifetime come to our lifetime, all that we're witnessing in our lifetime. My dad could have never fathomed a day there would have been a black president. Talk is one thing. He ran for president. He's the first person that said, had he won, he would have demanded a recount. So it is running for president these days, that's its own business. When people run for president so they can write books, get radio shows, TV shows, half the people running don't think that. Trump halfway looked startled when he realized that there was a trick and he won. Maybe he wasn't on the trick, but he's part of the trick. So to see all of that, to experience what he went through, to see, the first thing about, we say, oh, we'll never be post-racial. No, well, probably not in our lifetime, but you can see the cards are changing, and you can see this with millennials. And as my dad used to talk about indigo children, well, now with the technology, whatever the next evolution of an indigo child is, man, I can remember we had Encyclopedia Britannicas in the house, and by the time they're printed, the shit's old. It's no longer news. So everything you're studying is history. With these devices, we're watching stuff real time. You look at this last mass shooting, and you see how quickly the students that were in the school, they sounded hipper than their parents. It just is, what do you mean we can't change guns? Oh, no. And so that lack of fear is becoming more universal because like minds are able to connect, communicate all over the world, and that's a movement. That's its own digital movement that my pop understood the energy from it. He didn't understand. I'm a consumer. I don't design. I don't do. When it comes to technology, I'm a digital consumer. I know nothing about the backbone of it. And you have to watch it like anything else. You have to be cautious of it. We saw with all the fake news, tricks can still be in there. But at least we now, if you do just a little bit of work, you can scratch down to get to the surface and see what's really good. Now, if you want to be intellectually lazy and just take what's spoon-fed you, well, you're still going to be tricked. You don't have to do a lot of work to get to the bottom of it. And we have the volumes of resources that the Marcus Garveys, the Dick Gregorys, the Malcolm X, the Mark King, we have all of that we're standing on, that now that with these new resources, we got no excuse, man. We can sit, and there's I used to try to explain to my pop, what a troll is, what an internet troll is. I said half these folks are like, it's a white man pretending to be a young black boy. It's a black boy pretending to be an old Asian woman. You can be whoever you want to be. That's why in his social media, I know, Dick Gregory's boule, Dick Gregory, we would sit and laugh about because this stuff he would say, and so people would always say, well, what about when Malcolm, so my dad definitively had a, you and I could have a falling out for one day and I say something slick and then the rest of our life we're best friends. So they look to that one comment that Malcolm made and they judge that like, well, that was a universal blanket statement. That was correct. Yeah, and it's Malcolm was clear, Dick Gregory was clear. And you and I right now, man, we got a strong Wi-Fi signal in here. Right. We got, it's clear. The air conditioning's on. We're comfortable. We can pick up our phone, order food, order drink, call for a ride to come pick us up. That was a different day, man. These cats were dying every day. So you take SEAL Team 6 and you have them on the front line. Man, they may have taught some stuff about each other back at the
Right.
base, but when we're on the front line, we're on the front line.
Right.
So when someone's up with their, they slept in till noon, they got their feet up on grandma's sofa, and they just hear throwing punches, I'm just like, I giggle. My dad had a great relationship with Nick Cannon. A lot of people didn't understand. He had relationships with folks who respected him. And then who he respected. He didn't watch many movies. He didn't watch. Say, hey, look, this brother's spirit is right. When but you had to seek him out. He didn't know. We were together, and Prince came up. Prince was a huge Dick Gregory fan. I mean, Tavis Smiley tells a story that in order to walk into Prince's home, when you first walked in, he had a Dick Gregory shrine to the right, and he had to point each thing to you and teach you the story about Dick Gregory as you walked in. Prince, the commercial that he did for Target, the song that's for that is the song he made as a tribute song to Dick Gregory. So the irony of, the song Prince made for Dick Gregory is the song that Target is selected to use. That's almost a trick in itself. So whenever you heard Prince talking about chemtrails, now the scientist in me says, hey, everything we're looking at, that's a condensation trail. Jet air comes out superheated, but that doesn't mean at a particular time. We know that the Tuskegee Airmen were given, we know about the syphilis experiment. So we know, yes, well, that shot wasn't just a shot. There was something like, you could have a plane that is releasing something, manganese and all the things that you hear. That's absolutely true. That doesn't mean we could go up there now and say, oh, that's what that is there. Because you get some folks, they'll take pictures by air. Well, look at all these chemtrails. We're always all in. We got to kind of set down and set our own filter and say, okay. Because then all that happens is some scientist goes proves it not and said, yeah, we told you this was bullshit. No, we're not talking broad spectrum. We're talking about what folks have had the ability to do at one point in their life. And history already speaks to that. History already proves that. Matter of fact, history probably only scratches the surface because most of the real shit never got dug up. It never got discussed. So there's some real hurt and pain that black and brown folks all over the world have been exposed to that it probably will never come out. And then at this point, is there any good to it coming out? If we already know it could happen, we don't need to know all of the specifics, because as a community, we've dealt with a lot of heavy hurt. And so my dad would always say, the average black person growing up in this country, when they make it, they just need to take about 1 year, spend about $1 million on themselves, and just spoil themselves with treats, just to start the process of undoing the damage that's up in that frontal lobe. I could go into Neiman Marcus, and the security guard may look and say, wow, that's a beautiful tie that brother got on. All I see is a security guard looking at me, and my senses were like, what are you looking at, brother? Like, I'm trying to pay your tax. So when your brain is stuck somewhere, anything what was intended to be a compliment could be perceived as something that was disrespectful. So it's all where our filter is. And Dick Gregory did a miraculous job of recalibrating filters. He helped us to reset our filter, properly prioritize what's important, what's bullshit. And then so whoever the most, I'm not an artist, Picasso, these names you hear. So imagine Picasso's walking down the street, and this is some cat who just started finger painting yesterday. He's going to run up to Michelangelo Picasso and say, hey, you did that wrong. And so, everyone would see Brother Dick. They had to try to out conspiracy theorists, the conspiracy theorist, and you would see him explode like, wait, you haven't earned the right to have this conversation with me yet. Your first day in med school, I'm a world-renowned neurosurgeon. You can't say, hey, I think you were wrong when you haven't earned the right to be. You say whatever you want, but I'm going to respond and push back because you're having this conversation like we're equals, and I don't view you as an equal. We're both human beings. I'm clear on that, but I don't view your intelligence on this. But you haven't earned your stripes, and so that was always a problem, and it was always, oh man, because everyone wanted to impress Brother Dick, so they'd want to run up. They want to out conspiracy theorists saying, well, I think you were wrong. Oh man, they would just get colorful. You just knew, the siblings just knew. He'd sit back, like lying in wait, like, okay, bro, and it was always fire. I mean, the cat had a lot of fire, man. The cat, he could dial it up on demand, and he could light you up. And that's from a lifetime of doing it. What a lot of people don't realize in grade school, back in the 30s, at least in St. Louis, skinny black children, it was assumed they had tuberculosis. So not elementary school, but middle school. So think about that, middle school, when you're 10, 11, 12, and testosterone's starting to drop, you're becoming, and you're required to go to a special needs school. So he went to, back then they called it crippled, now we call it handicapped, or physically, it was mental and physical handicaps, the disabled, and that was his school environment. Everyone he went to school with was either physically disabled, mentally disabled, or had tuberculosis. So he was, now think about this, he's a young man at this point. So every day he would exit class and leave this middle school for sick and ailing kids and walk right past Sumner High School and most bullies, they go after the low hanging fruit, the easy target. So my pops really earned and developed his chops of being quick from protecting his peers, the kids he went to school with who really did have physical, mental, emotional handicaps. Hey, not today. You're not going to mess with John today. And so that's where and he realized, hey, wait a minute, I'm funny. My timing's on point. You can't learn that. You either have it, you either have the timing, or you don't. You read all the joke books in the world. But if you don't have the wit and the wisdom to know when and how to deliver that jab. And so the two things my dad mastered was he learned how to quickly, if I can out funny you before you can even come, you've already lost. I've already broke your spirit. So he was dealing with kids older than him, and he would quickly throw a knockout blow, and they learned, hey, don't make. So then they just, hey, and we saw this. Hey, little man over there is quick with you. We need to befriend him quick. We need him as our ally. And so that's when he realized the power of comedy and being the first one to throw a jab. And so a comedic jab. And when he couldn't handle it, when it got too heavy, he became an awesome runner, man. So fight or flight, he was the embodiment of that whole physiological process. I can stay here and fight with you with this big comedic sword that I'm moving like a samurai, but if it gets too heavy, I can run like the wind, bro, and none of y'all ain't keeping up with a man who ran across the country 2 times. So it was both ends of that spectrum, and that's how he lived his life, man. It was a duality. Sometimes you just get tired of it. Say, I'm not today. Or sometimes he could sit and for hours do what we're doing right now. Some of the things that I would push back towards on some of the interview requests, because 10-hour interview, because he can go. You have to stand up and say, all right, and it's good stuff, so you don't want to give it up. It's good stuff. And so they say, hey, well, wait a minute. It's your responsibility, or as an interviewer, to come in, know what the game plan is, knowing this, just like union. Hey, it's time you got to take a lunch break, time you got to take a bathroom break. Oh, because this brother can just go. So that the only time I would ever intervene would be like, okay, we need to wrap this up, because he could be here all day. Now, if you want to do it multiple days, great, because keep in mind, there's folks out here who are like, Dick Gregory's all over. He gave, man. I mean, he gave. Yeah. I always refer to my pop as a spiritual trillionaire. I mean, he was a universal spiritual trillionaire. He would give his last penny and then say, I'm going to sit still for a minute. Sit still, put his fingers together, do a couple deep breaths, channel it. Next morning, be like, hey, that check came from so-and-so. It was just all, I stopped. I never worried about him in that capacity, because it always, I mean, after what time seeing a miracle, is it still something that is surprising to you? So, yeah, this cat's a miracle worker. Yeah, okay. How many children do you have to save where you say, hey, this cat's an incredible lifeguard? So, at the 15th rescue in a day, hey, well, yeah, good job, man. You got another one. So so to watch him do it effortlessly and all day long, and part of the vascular disease that he had is what led to almost malnourishment, in a sense that his blood vessels were not absorbing nutrients properly. So he would take this copious amounts of vitamins, man, and just chew them. So a lot of the white almost paste you would see around his lips was from all of the he ate a half bottle of vitamin C and activated charcoal before he sat in front of your camera. And so most people would say, hey, but they were so intimidated by the fire, they would say, just let Dick go. Like to say, so I would come aside and say, when, all his big interviews for 60 Minutes and CBS Sunday Morning News, all about, hey, Pop, but when the man was a walk-in interview, you say, well, you can't. So that too was the quickest way for nutrients to get into the body is sublingually to get absorbed into the bloodstream. So innately, he just knew if I chew this, it's going to get, and I feel better. So people would say, oh, Dick Gregory's, even though as he got older, he definitely lost his desire for drinking water. I mean, we become kids again. We become fussy. Hey, Pop, never seen you with a bag of candy. Like, hey, well, and I never put like, look, you did your time, man. You want French fries, you want whatever you want. Like, but hey, Brother Dick was just in the anti-Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial. Oh, but he's eating some fried chicken. So it just is, when you get that, man, you gotta let people be. Like, no one, I mean, I hope if you and I get to that age, people aren't busting our chops and everybody. Like, let folks live, man. Take the lesson. Take the lesson, and that's where it is. But it's easier to push back because that's what. So one of the interviews I did shortly, I was a good brother up in Connecticut. That after my dad passed, he said, "Well, look, Brother Christian, do you think your father was a prophet?" And I said, "Look, this is important because the moment we start putting labels on folks, most of us don't necessarily. He meant it as a badge of honor. Most people don't necessarily. It gives them an opportunity to not have to do any work. Oh, I don't. Yeah, Brother Dick did that, but Brother Dick was a prophet. No, all of us can channel our inner Dick Gregory, our inner Malcolm, inner Martin, whoever. And there's no rule that says you got to vibe with all of the freedom fighters. You got to vibe with all. Pick who you like. Okay, great. You don't have to tear anyone down. And so when I see folks on social media participating in and I don't want to be hard on anyone. I'm always careful about branding because there was a big pushback when my dad did a Nike commercial. So, and there was a lot of conversation that went into that. So I'm always, but I don't like to be judgmental, but there's folks who are participating in all of from what they're drinking to what they're wearing to what car they're driving, and then they want to be hard on others. It's like, you're participating in the Big Ten every day. And so now you want to come in here and be hypersensitive about what someone else is doing. So we need to learn part of the reason there's not as much joy in activism now, because we hold folks too accountable. I mean, we have to look at the totality of what they've done, not just, anyone can stumble. So if I'm just sitting here waiting for you to stumble, well, you'll get your joy at some point, because at some point we're all human. I'm going to stumble, and then that's the aha moment. 90% of what this brother said ain't shit, because I saw him trip up right here. And it's a dangerous thing to do, and our community seems to do it more than most. Now let me qualify that. Okay. There is no more beautiful community than our community. When you think and my pop would push back right now and say, because it's in my head, we don't have communities, we have neighborhoods. And I mean, so, of course we have communities, but what he's driving is that, well, in your community, you don't own nothing. So is it really your community, or is it community you temporarily are residing in until they decide they want you somewhere else? Right. Harlem was a perfect example of that. Black folks didn't own Harlem. They rented in Harlem. So when Harlem went through its major economic development boom, folks that look like you and me didn't benefit from it. DC is the polar opposite. Black home ownership in DC is the leading black home ownership in the world. And so when this town flipped, oh man, folks that look like you and I made out well. I mean, right next to us, we're in Navy Yards right now. Right behind us is the Nationals baseball stadium. There's an Ethiopian cat who spent $500,000 on a parcel of land that he was putting an auto, for all the cab drivers here, he had a tire and rim repair shop. $500,000. Within 6 months of him buying it, his property went from $500,000 to $3 million, because they announced that's where the new baseball stadium. So had he been on the other side of the street, he would have been eminent domain. He would have got his $500,000. They would have paid him fair market value for it. But just from being one side of the street away, he went from a $500,000 property to a $3 million property. Now you see power. So if we're in a white town, and I can, with a wink, tell you over dinner, hey, you should go buy a lot of houses on the west side of 3rd Street, not on the east side. And a wink, done. Right. You know what that means. You go and say, oh, Mr. Williams coming here buying up this whole lot. And he make $1 billion, man. I mean, this is what, that's why, and again, everything I say is my opinion. Unlike my dad, I'm not a leader. I'm a chiropractor, and I've looked out for a lot of legends, and I'm a guarder of legacies, because I see the sacrifice that truly goes in. And a lot of our legends are hurting, man. They give so much. People, pirating their music. I mean, perfect example. Anything you see of Dick Gregory on YouTube, he never got paid a penny for it. This is him. It's like, we've always talked. It's hard, man. Well, we're going to build a YouTube channel. We're going to do. But when someone is kind of fighting for their life towards the end, you're not really thinking of them. Now there's a team putting all of that in place because it's not okay for other folks to decide your philanthropy. You need to decide. But there's too many folks that in our community decide folks' philanthropy, and that's not okay. That's something we need to. The Super Bowl commercial with Dodge Ring. Yeah. I know my dad's position on the King children. I mean, my dad became almost like a surrogate father for so many of these folks in the movement who lost their father. So he stepped in and filled a void. Uncle Dick. So he was very close with Coretta and the King children. Intellectual property is property. And so we have to respect the will. When you and I leave and the will we have of who we want to do, we have to respect that. You can't be Martin Luther King III, the namesake, and say, hello, welcome to Bank of America. I'm Martin Luther King III. What do you need, a cashier's check? Imagine how come, Martin Luther King, he's working it back up. Right. It's like that misguided love is dangerous, man. It's dangerous. If you and I own the house where Rosa Parks grew up in, we got a right to sell it. If you want to come in and buy it, great, but you can't say, oh, well, you sold it to it. Wait, to me, you can't tell me what's an investment and what is something I need to hold on to for dear life. Someone's child may need a kidney transplant. You never know what's behind that decision. And it's so easy just to throw these families under the bus. Oh, they're greedy, they're this. And what my dad would always make very clear, there's a lot of folks whose parents got assassinated or just murdered in the streets. As they start healing, time's a pacifier. Well, if every year on the anniversary of the day your father was gunned down, you see the Lorraine Hotel replay, you see your father laying there, kind of hard to heal when every single year that gets replayed. So what's viewed as, oh, we're just paying homage, we're showing respect. Well, that may be that way to you. That's not your father up there with a bullet in his head laying on the ground. So we're always so quick to insulate the folks immediately around us. Oh, well, that's Mr. Ray. He saw something horrible happen when he was, okay. Well, we got to have that same level ability to be understanding when it's the legacies that when is the last time most black folks have really dug in their pocket and bought something that supported one of these estates, truly? So the King, Malcolm X. When is half the X shirts you see are not Malcolm's family? Now, I know that his daughter just recently announced that they're coming out, but really, and so, people just assume, oh, these families are no, because everything they did, they gave. And so there's not I'm here, I'm a retired activist, where's my activism pension? There's not one. And so that's our responsibility to step up and say, we're gonna insulate these folks. They got health care, they got grandchildren that need braces, and the moment one of them falls, we're so quick to, that family's so trifling. And it's just not fair. Most of us, the stuff we're using is bootleg. It's, oh, that's a beautiful Malcolm shirt you got. Oh, at my dad's funeral, there were some amazing Dick Gregory shirts out there. None of them were sanctioned. My thing is this, I view some of this, a lot of it's a badge of honor. So if Adidas puts out a Dick Gregory shirt and didn't pay for it, that's a legal issue. If Brother Man up the street made a beautiful, hey man, Pops was about the people, hey, we made $1 million from this Dick Gregory shirt. Well, we're gonna have a talk. If it's, hey, so you gotta keep it in perspective and scale. And what my scale is, or the Gregory family scale is, may be different than what the X family is, but we have to do a better job. So, that's true. Lots of black people, tremendous amount of white people had never heard that particular speech that was used in the Dodge Ram commercial. So many of us get to, I have a dream, and we don't even listen to the entirety of it, and then we stop. So for me, I thought it was, and it was a lot of pushback I got for my opinion on social media. For me, I thought, wow, okay, this is a great message to get out. And so I've even had siblings of mine that had this conversation. Oh, well, and everyone's entitled. The wonderful thing about the Gregory family, everyone's entitled and respects each other's opinion. Right. Well, Dodge Ram was one of the companies that participated in the corporate bailout after the automobile bust. They flew in on their corporate jets, and they did what. Now, if I'm some misguided kid getting ready to shoot up the school tomorrow and I don't want to throw any particular state under the bus, but out there, wheat belt, Bible belt, wherever folks be snapping. And that message resonates with me. Say, well, I never heard that before. Well, okay, well, should we keep all these messages guarded where no one's hearing them? Or do we digitize them and make them alive so the world can hear them? You knew what it was, but all these folks over here didn't. So it's selfish to say, only we can use this. No one else can use it. Now, I don't know anything about Dodger. They may have a horrible track record with how they treat their black, or they may be an industry leader for how many women in minority. I don't know. I mean, I can't do like my pop. I can't do everyone's homework for them. All I'm saying is I know that of the large black-owned businesses in the world, none of them knocked on the King Estate door to do a Super Bowl commercial. If they had, now if someone said, oh, well, Oprah Winfrey wanted to do it, and they said no, they went over here and did it with Dodge Ram, then maybe that's a conversation we have. But if this is the only person who's knocking, we need to look at us and say, well, what moves advertising is dollars being spent. So we show respect. Every time you spend $1, you're casting a vote. So whether you like it or not, you can't talk trash about it. Now, unless it's a municipality, here we have Petco or Comcast Cable. So if you don't have a choice, you just don't have a choice. Most of us have a choice in these things. So the best way, if it's something you're opposed to, don't spend your money with it. Some advertising firm did the research to say, there's something in this demographic right now, and the energy with Trump and everything. People, there's messages. We're going to hear more of them. I mean, we're going to hear more. And we as a community need to, we need to have, this isn't, I'm never heavy, my way or the highway. We just need to have a conversation. We need to have a real conversation of the scales of balance, the good versus the bad. Okay, did most people sit across that and say, hey, that company ain't shit. They benefited from the bailout. They benefit. Most of us said, wow, that, even in my own home, we got to talking about it was powerful imagery in the commercial. It was wow. And what people don't realize, there's a lot of folks that look like you and I that are, this isn't some, fat, jolly white man that's disconnected from our community. That's the Nike commercial my dad did. It was two brothers from Brooklyn that wrote that entire senior marketing advertising executives with the advertising firm that exclusively works for Nike. The name's escaping me right now. Dad said no initially. I won't get into the totality of the story. He said no initially. Once some further conversations were had, and then some further, and then some further, and then some further, he decided he was going to do it. And so on Nike's and there, okay, he's not going to do it. Okay, he is going to do it. So when we showed up there, the two young brothers that wrote it were crying. Like these brothers, they were probably late 20s, early 30s, literally crying. They were saying, first of all, they were in awe of the men. Said, for a lifetime, we grew up on Dick Gregory. If you don't kick rocks and investigate, you don't know it's out there. Like, you're trying to hustle Dick Gregory. You don't understand. And when I read the script and just saw how beautiful the role they wanted to play, in a nutshell, Nike having Kevin Durant and LeBron James, the dilemma they found themselves in is, okay, LeBron James is arguably the best. So we need a moniker for Kevin Durant. So it's okay, we're going to call him the baddest. Who is the best person on the planet to come in and sit down and look in this camera and tell the world why it's better to be the baddest than it is to be the best? And Dick Gregory. They wrote this. Oh man, it was Pop. I mean, so Pops doesn't read scripts. It's all passion. It's all improv, all passion. So lights, camera, action for 3 hours, man. He just lit that park up with stories about why no one cares about the best. People want to know who's the baddest, and to see that 3 hours boil down to that short snippet in the commercial, but you can still feel the power in it. That commercial ran during the World Cup, so international commercial. Nike typically rolls their commercials out. They play 2 or 3 times, and they're available always online, but they don't do heavy. It's like the Michael Jackson Pepsi commercial. Play once, and then when we didn't have online back then, so you were just you missed out. So the calls that came in from all over the world, and the conversation, the pro conversation for why it should be done was, imagine, black, white, brown families sitting around the dinner table, the third generation in the family going, wow, because it's a KD commercial. Then suddenly they see grandpa do a backflip out of the chair. Like, wait, was that Dick Gregory? And then they keep looking, and then they see him again. Oh, so the kids say, well, why the hell, Grandma? They never get excited about these commercials. And it starts a dialogue. It starts a conversation about who this man is, why I'm so excited. I know why you're excited to see Kevin Durant,
right.
But why are you, Grandma, Grandpa, Mom, and Dad, so excited to see this man? These things are real, so we need to do a better job. Museums are cool. We need to do a better job of bringing these legacies to life, man. The messages are multi-generational. I mean, they'll go on forever. This was not only applicable in the 70s. The messages then, especially even more so with the current administration we have, they're the same. I am a man. Each one teach one. All of these, they're just these slogans, these lifestyle provoking past, hashtag me too, hashtag, all of this birthed out of the civil rights movement. As my pop would always say, you went from flying in the air with everyone chain smoking on, it didn't matter. It could be a mom in first class breastfeeding a baby, everyone else in the plane was chain smoking. So, I never smoked, we all smoked, and we didn't have a choice in the matter. And everyone that worked on the plane looked like they were ripped out of a centerfold. So, look at all the sexism, look at all as a result of the civil rights movement, it was like, so my dad would always say, anytime you get on that plane, you see that old, ugly, bent over, hunchback white woman bringing you your coffee on the plane, we did that. We just don't realize. And then around the world, you look at Tiananmen Square, all these movements that were birthed out of, and I know, I went to Morgan State undergrad, that's where I went to college, and I was borderline militant. There was a lot of cats I rolled with that were militants, and I've wanting to get guns and wanting to get, but just with the upbringing that I had, and not on being a pacifist, just knowing that violence isn't if you truly love life, you can't just go around snuffing out life to get things the way you do. You do it, you change, just universal, through love, through understanding, through, we're going to keep at it. And the civil rights movement is a wonderful example of that. So when I see like the white militias getting guns, I just giggle, man. I say, look, you're getting guns because you want to go up against the government. The government's going to have a drone fly and put a drop of something in your water supply. Everyone's dead in the morning, sleeping with your gun in your lap. So it just is, it's unrealistic, but something about testosterone, man, I got this power in my hands. Man, you can't shoot at something that's not there. You're gonna shoot the water. So it just is, it's a false sense of hope. And the more we come online, and that's not, there's too many guns. I mean, I think that there's too many guns, there's too much hatred, in just being raised the way we're raised and just seeing the beauty of life. And anytime I hear about someone losing their life, it's a sad thing, especially when it's not someone that was not able to fully express themselves through a lengthy life cycle. And so it is, but there's so many gifts, man. There's so many seeds that were left. You got them, I got them. Not everyone got the one-on-one sessions, because those gifts were even, they're special, and then there's off the chart. And so the folks that got the off, we have an obligation now. We have an obligation not to be parrots. Now, do I agree with everything Dick Gregory said? No, he doesn't agree with everything. Not supposed to. Like, this isn't a dictatorship. Most dictators are wrong. So this is, again, like I said earlier, you're hot, I'm cold. Who's right? It's how we feel. So we need to respect each other, and we need to demand respect, but we don't need to demand it at the end of a rifle. We need to demand it with love. Like Pop would always say, be loving and lovable. That's not a weak statement. That's not water dripping on a rock. It's every splash is one more bit of love, but it's slowly cracking that rock in two. So, love is a powerful thing. It's cheap. It's cheap to hate. Someone can throw something out, and that's why folks that have large social media followings, and then you got a cat that's got like 2 people following him, says something real slick and off the lawn, and then that just sticks with you. And it's just like, I just look at it, I keep it moving. I don't even, once in a, if they phrase it as a question, like, well, what about, You know, they say never argue with fools because onlookers can't tell the difference between you. So then you say, you know what? Some of it has been like, okay, it's a break. Then it's like, it doesn't matter what I say. You have an agenda and it's not going to change. I'm not an agenda changer. That's not my job. If you, unlike my dad who went around, hey, who needs some of this? Who needs some of this? That's not, if you come to me and we're discussing it, great. I'm not here, you know, I got an abundance because my calling is different and I have to respect what it is. But at the same time, I want to prop up and respect and protect and insulate all that he gave. And it's big, man. It's an awesome responsibility. It's an awesome responsibility. I'm time enough for it. And every twist and turn is made. There's Broadway plays. There's new movie. John Legend is producing a new feature film. There's a new phenomenal documentary, I Am Dick Gregory. My dad's first biography, Nigger, is being re-released and being updated. And you know, the content of the book, not, but the forward, additional photo. It's a lot of special stuff that's going on, bigger than most people could even fathom. The Bahamian diet has evolved to the Caribbean diet. There's so many things. I mean, there's just so many. Dick Gregory was so many nutritionist, activist, comedian, runner, athlete. There's so many different things. And so, you know, the family will take a moment, we'll make some decisions as what's the best way to protect his, similar, the conversations that went on around our community about the Dodge Ram commercial, the conversations that go on in the Gregory's home regularly. So we need to all be on the same page. And this could be a family with 2 people. No one's ever on the same. You got 10, everyone's entitled to that. You know, everyone's entitled to that. It's just when, you know, when sometimes people think, oh, well, you know, it's a 10th. Everyone's got a 10th. There's 10 of us, we divvy it up, and then it's my mom. You know, she's kind of like the referee. Same thing when we were growing up on the farm wrestling, man. Like, hey, you hit too hard, you put a rock inside of your snowball, you cut it. Hey, there had to be some rules. Someone had to check folks from time to time. So, you know, my mom's still 80 years old. She's still refereeing, man, and she's no joke at it. So but no, it's marvelous, man. I'm excited and filled with joy just knowing how much the world is still going to receive from this man. It just is, it's something that we haven't, you know, it sounds going, oh, tip of the iceberg, but really this is. I mean, this is where the base of this is, I can't even see it anymore because at this point, it's just so massive, man. So it's incredible stuff. It's amazing stuff. Definitely rooted in love and being lovable. And it definitely is going to make not our community, not this country, but the world a better place. There's no question about that.
I want to ask you, you mentioned a biopic. Is it going to be a biopic about Dick?
So yes, so that's what. So Turn Me Loose, which is hard, man, because you know, how do you cram? Just like the museum you visited the other day too. How do you cram 60 years of, you know, you look at anyone else. Well, you know, Ali or this. Well, how do you? Because you know, Pops never stopped. So it's how do you? So they'll struggle with that a little bit. I'm certain they will.
Wow.
But this day in this digital age and creative storytelling will, and I want to be real clear because this is something that was confused that my dad had said at one point when Miles Davis biopic came out.
Yeah.
My dad, some people understood what my dad said to mean that there shouldn't be a white man that's writing this. And that's not what he said.
Right.
He said that they couldn't get this film made without that white man because they were required to put the white man into a role as almost like a co-star.
Right.
And so that's it, but people misunderstood that. So people say, oh, wait a minute. Turn Me Loose, this phenomenal play, one-man play. You saw it with Joe Morton becoming Dick Gregory.
Right.
Well, there was a white writer. My dad never said that. You know, his first book, he co-wrote it with a white man, Robert Lipsyte. So and again, no one at 80 is as clear as they were at 28. So my dad talking fast, and he'll stop a statement to cuss you out. And then they realized he never finished explaining what he meant. So, you know, the best interviews that came with him were people who just, you know, like the ones he did, let him say what he's saying. And then sometimes you need to gently suggest to revisit that, but you can't make it seem like you're scratching your head at it because it's like, you know, nigga, what kind of fool is you? We're going to go back here. So, oh, man, I love it, man. I love because I knew if he didn't respect you, he wouldn't be sitting with you. So the fact that he's there, and he's oh man, I would never let that old man talk to me. Like, come on, man, like, you know what I mean? Oh, I mean, it just is. It just, it just is. I mean, if someone's intent. You know, someone could be talking to you kind as day as they're sticking a blade in you. You know, like, you know, you can't tone and all these things, and that's what happens. So, you know, we're too hypersensitive. We're too hypersensitive. Look at the work. Look at the work that's done. Look at the sacrifice. Don't focus on the talk, man. And so, in our community, for folks, we had so many talkers telling us what they're going to do instead of doing it. Look at the folks who have walked the walk and give them a little more laterality for their sacrifice.
You know what I do? I educate people as quick as I can about Dick. He was an inspirational freedom song. He held 2 heavyweight champions of the world, Riddick Bowe, Muhammad Ali, ran across the country twice. He's like the real life Forrest Gump. Absolutely. And I've heard that Nick Cannon uses that analogy a lot because and this is where they're struggling telling his story, even the documentary, because there's so much content, man. I mean, it's just, it's one person. Absolutely. And I frequently, it is, because he reinvented himself so many times in, you know, it was almost like he was multi-personality because he had his comedy show stored here, had his nutrition piece here, his civil rights here, and he said, okay, what are we talking about today? Boom, now as he got older, those personalities weren't sequestered. They started to kind of, no pun intended, but they bled together. So we started getting some calls about, Dick Gregory speaking at the high school got a little too colorful too. So we realized, okay, we really need to get all the way back to just doing comedy because you can't offend it. Well, you can, but this is what you came here for. So that's where people say, wow, Dick's doing a lot of comedy these days. So Paul Mooney reached out and said, you know, and just a beautiful brother, had a wonderful relationship with my dad. Just the healing they provided the world through laughter, it affords them more respect than what they get. Most of us listen to Paul Mooney stuff, and we're listening to it bootleg, we're listening to it, and it's like, hey, if you love something, support it. Otherwise, it's not going to be here anymore. And so that type of comedy we can't turn it into a PG film. It's why is Eddie Murphy doing, you know, character voices? I would be doing the same thing. You know, all y'all want to do is laugh for free. Right. You know, at some point, you know, I got children to take care of. I got a household to take care of. And so we have to respect the folks. I mean, we have to, and not just talk respect. You know, how do you say, well, I brought a bootleg shirt. That's not, you're not supporting them. And so we talk about support, but we don't actually truly support. And that's something that you do. And it's not my job to tell folks how. They need to be creative and figure out their own ways of how to support the folks who mean something to them, the folks that help them to get on the right path, or maybe never did nothing for them, but they did it for your mom or your dad. It just is, it's layers of insulation that we need to provide these folks, and we have to get better at it. Yeah, I also like some people taking things out of context. I know that Bob was very critical of some aspects of Mr. Farrakhan's thing this last time. And people got emotional about it, but the fact that the minister will come and do the eulogy, he did a great job. Spoke volumes about it. People run down the street, I had brothers from the nations that brought up, you know, you kind of talking reckless about the minister.
Again, it's perspective.
Right.
You know, at the end of the day, just like when I said, is Dick Gregory a prophet? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we need to allow these people to be human. We need to allow these. All I know is these people have been fixtures in my life since I was a child. So other folks talk about them almost like an abstract or them as a thing. These people, and I've watched the way they have arguments regularly right there at the table. And then they piece it out, they hug, they embrace. I mean, love. I mean, you know, folks, if you look at a married couple, we argue, we love it. It's what it's what it's grounded. People, the beautiful stories never get on the front page. It's always the pain and suffering. And then when the pain and suffering gets turned beautiful, it gets tucked away in the back. We need to relish and prop up the beautiful relationship. And that's what we were mentioning about Malcolm, when folks know why Malcolm said about Dick Gregory. And Malcolm said that it's the totality of their relationship. That's why it's a relationship. A relationship isn't frozen in time. It's a living thing. And so the respect that Dick Gregory and Malcolm had for one another lives on to this day with the relationship that the Gregorys have with Malcolm's children. You're talking to someone as a healthcare provider. I've taken care of Coretta Scott King. I've taken care of her health and her spine. C. Dolores Tucker, Dr. Dorothy Height, Betty Shabazz. Man, it's like I could tell stories forever, man. Yeah. When Rosa Parks got the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor, I got a call at my clinic that Rosa Parks was staying at the O Street Mansion, which is a hotel in DC. She was having back pain, couldn't get out of bed. Secret Service detail comes to my clinic, picks me up, because when you receive the Congressional Gold Medal of Honor, the 24 hours surrounding it, you're under a full Secret Service protection. Pick me up, bring me to the O Street Mansion, which so I worked on her in her actual suite. That suite's now called the Rosa Parks Suite. If you were to go there today, they've named that suite after her. Before my dad passed, the last time we stayed there, he stayed in the Rosa Parks Suite. It's just all the imagery and the synergy, man. It's just so powerful. Yeah. So, for me, and someone who was never starstruck, just because, John Lennon and Yoko Ono babysat us as kids. Marvin Gaye personally watched me before. So these were just folks, these were Pop's folks. They came down the farm, they let it all hang out. They were just real. And so you understood who they were. There wasn't a Michael Jackson or Janet Jackson, anywhere they performed in the world, we could go to the back door and say, hey, Christian Gregory's here, like to see the show. Someone would come and get us, bring us backstage, sit us in the front row. That was just the respect that these people had for someone who they say, hey, look, if we're going to support you, we need to support you. We can't just say it. So I work on Rosa Parks back, get her propped up. She's feeling better, and she, it's that love. Like, she just didn't let go of life. She said, no, you're coming with me. And so, I wasn't dressed the part. I wasn't looking the part. I didn't know I was going to the Capitol Rotunda when I went to work that morning to sit and watch history unfold. So I rode with her and her group in the full motorcade over to the Capitol Rotunda. I come in. I realized where my dad's sitting. They walked me past him because I'm coming with her. And they sit me in the second row right next to then General Colin Powell. So, Colin Powell's like, who the hell's this cat? Not dressed the part, because I didn't, I was working. I didn't even have a tie on, just a button up. And so I introduced myself, say, hey, Christian Gregory, Dick Gregory's son. And everyone, but huge fan of your dad. Oh, your dad spoke at my university why is your dad back there? Wherever my dad was performing, I've always been a strong communicator. So there wasn't anywhere, security, whatever, I couldn't easily not even circumvent, just reason with that, hey, I need to be in there. My dad would always get back to his green room, and I was always sitting there eating his food and drinking. What took you so long? Hey, how the hell did you get back in here? So which is just a wonderful part of our relationship. But to sit there and witness and watch that happen, it was just powerful. It was just so incredibly powerful. And not once did it cross my mind, oh, you're here because you just fixed your back, or you're here because you're supposed to be here. There's something about this moment. You're supposed to be present, sitting right where you're sitting. When Coretta Scott King passed away, my father and I went to the funeral together. There was every living U.S. president was there. And President George W. Bush was current president at the time, so he was there. Every one of them pulled away from their Secret Service detail to hug Dick Gregory, to say, to every one of them. And George W. came over and said something around the time his commencement at Yale, you gave the something address around my commencement, and just gave him a big hug. And there was it was civil rights heavy hitters all in there. That was the only person that all of them stopped and pulled away from to do. It just was critical.
He criticized people had his love for him.
He's hard. Brother Dick, I call it the Brother Dick pass. And so Brother Dick, he was hard on Obama, but he got invited to the White House. Right. Hard on Oprah, she brought him to her personal home. Now, at first he was like, man, because I don't tell too many inside things. So I share the things I know he'd be comfortable with me sharing, because the language is always colorful. And so he said, man, beep, 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 beep. I'm definitely not going to that beep, 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 beep. And he said, well, if I do go, I'm not going to eat or drink. And now, you can see the pictures of him there, you know, eating and drinking his ass off. If I do go, I'm not, because he realized the love. He realized the, you know, it's, my dad would be hard on Bill Clinton. And I mean, he does the truth. But they say, hey, look, man, to hug you and thank you doesn't mean I agree with everything you said. But there was a moment in my life that something you said really resonated with me.
The Ron Brown piece, though.
Oh no! It is what it is, and part of this is since my dad started as a comedian. Comedians always get a pass, and so that's part of it. So it's complicated, but that's part of it too, because he started as, oh, that's his dick being funny, or that's it, because when you really got close, he was such a lovable, personable guy. You wanted to, and you know, you wanted to be his friend, and you wanted to have an exchange with him, because it was always so rewarding. I mean, his wit and wisdom, like even, I mean, this guy never. He never went to college, didn't have all kind of PhDs, but could go toe to toe when folks would be hard on black athletes. Oh, this one lost all their money. He'd say, shit, man, you got PhDs in finance and economics that go broke. So of course, this is not we're so quick to be hard on one another. But when Medgar Evers called and pulled my dad out of comedy, that was the catalyst. Before Dr. King, Medgar Evers called and brought my dad over to work with the Freedom Summer, where they were working with voter registration. So my dad was speaking at voter registration drives, and my dad viewed Medgar as this bigger than, I mean, he was a sergeant. He just the respect that people had for him. My dad was just kind of, they were young. Oh yeah, they were young, man. That's why you look at these cats and I say, you got no excuse for doing this, you know, in their 20s and 30s. It's like, so wait a minute. And he loved Medgar's swagger. I mean, Medgar was just, he was fearless, but not reckless. So don't confuse fearless with being reckless. He loved life. He loved his family, loved life, but was willing to lay it on the line because he loved humanity more than just his individual breath. And so that's a powerful thing. It's one thing to go to war for a military and have a nation, have a support system around you. It's another thing to say, look, you know, there's going to be times it's just me. It's just me. My dad was supposed to, so when people say, oh, Brother Dick he spoke and told Malcolm they were going to kill him before they killed him. They all talk like that every day. And he talked to King before, because folks were getting cut down every day. And so it's, that must be a conspiracy because he talked. So if you use a 2018 yardstick to measure the logic with, of course it's going to seem illogical. But if you stop, come out of your comfortable air conditioning, your lazy chair, and really place yourself in what that time was, then it all makes perfect sense. But right now there's someone who will listen and say, oh no, you're trying to protect Dick. My job, Dick needs no protection. Physically, while he was here, he was fallen, he was unstable. I mean, as it got towards the end, it was I worried about it a lot. But now where he is now, man, I mean, he's 25 again. You know, he's up there. He's out of that. He shed that old Earth suit, and now he's up there, man, with, you know, spizzerinctum and fire wearing folks out, man. For a while, man. So I was the last one to leave my dad in the hospital. I mean, we stayed for probably 5+ hours, man, just as a family. After he passed. 5 hours, because we didn't even have to officially say it as a family. We just understood science doesn't get everything right. There's no telling when the mind checks out, when the brain shuts down. So we were sitting there talking just like we're talking now. All the family was. So, and not because we were crazy or out of it, or, you know, we were laughing. Oh man, the language coming out of it. I know that there was one of the nurses came in after my dad had fully transitioned, and just said there's a couple of the nurses and medical staff here that just wonder if it's okay if we come in and give them a hug. And where does that happen, man? I mean, you know, I'm getting like tears in my eyes. And they just lined up. They came in, old, young, white, black, Asian, and just wanted to hug the man. When I turned around, so my dad hadn't been verbal in probably hours. So by the time they moved him into the intensive care, he wasn't talking. He was communicating with, gestures, and if I put my ear close, he could. But when I turned and I looked at the wall, the whiteboard in the urgent care room, because at this point we're thinking we're going to relocate him to another hospital downtown. We were getting ready to do a medical transport, and they were going to attempt to do a procedure to protect his artery, to stave off. It may have bought him 6 months, but that was the plan at that point. And so after he transitioned, I turned and I looked on this wall, and it said, "What would you like us to know about you?" So most people in the room, they're lucid enough to say, "Oh, I'm this, I'm this." And it said, Silver, I want to get this right. It said, comedian, civil rights legend, icon.
Right.
Someone in that room, because it wasn't anyone in the family. It's one of these quote unquote strangers, we didn't know them, knew enough about the man to capture on that wall. So to know that the care he was under when he transitioned were people that felt that way about him. Oh man, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, you can't make it up. I mean, and this is in the conversations I'm having with folks who are doing the movies, doing the documentaries. I mean, you almost can't even get the pulse of it because it's just so off the charts, man. So when Medgar Evers pulled my dad into activism, and he walked away from comedy and then ultimately full-time civil rights, which is a story in itself. But when he came back to comedy, he was a changed man. He became a vegetarian, stopped drinking, stopped smoking. Although he was still wildly funny, he refused to work comedy clubs because he didn't want to be somewhere where people were smoking or drinking. So as a result of that, he wound up doing the university circuit. Right. So colleges and university. And so he didn't say, oh, children in college, their brains out of place, that they're a better audience for me to go and speak to. It was about smoking and alcohol. As a result of that, when we're in college, that's when we're at pupils, man. That's when Dick Gregory's message. I remember when I was at Morgan, it was Brothers L. He didn't know, I never wore on my sleeve who my pop was. And he came, I said, oh man, Dick Gregory, that brother, he makes you, and I'm nervous, and I'm like, I'm gonna check this cat, he doesn't know who I am. So that type of brother, New York cat, Brooklyn cat, lots of swagger, said that brother makes you want to rip open your candy bar, throw the candy bar on the ground and eat the wrapper. And I said, that was and I said, and I use that a lot now. I mean, this cat has no idea how much that resonated with me because, shit, man, nowadays the wrapper may be healthier than the goddamn chemicals in the bar. And so they're putting the same stuff in both. So it just was interesting to see, because that's what made my pop proud, to be an agitator, to make you think, not to take you by the hand and connect the dots for you. It's like, look, I put all the dots in front of you. You can't connect them. That's on you. That's not my job to connect them for you. You just need to know that there's some connections that need to happen. And so the fact that he spoke at just got in a car with his team and went from college to university to college. Everyone I bump into has a Dick Gregory story. Your father spoke when I was at, they never say, I was at the Comedy Zone, or I was after this, you're right. The message was, and it was always rooted in laughter, no matter how, he could go from a scolding you to 2 seconds later, you're like, well, wait, shit, I'm laughing again. Now I'm back to being scolded. That was the beauty of his genius. But it's just a lot, man. It's a lot. It just is, it's exciting. I almost feel selfish knowing all of the things that are happening, because they're big. They're big, they're befitting, they're proper. In the same team that protected him here is the same team that's on board seeing it through. He was clear with marching orders, as clarity was never, especially as he was younger. Right. And since I knew him so well, even as he got older, even when it wasn't perfectly clear what he said, I was always perfectly clear what he meant. And so that was just one of the luxuries and benefits of being his wingman for 20 years and being inseparable with him from him. So you got a lot of good stuff in your archives. There's so much out there. The man's universal. He never was territorial. We want to make sure that people continue to have access to him.
Yeah, I know he said, I saw him in Kansas City back in August of 2016.
I remember that.
Afterwards, he said, like, man, I'm more popular now than I was in my prime because of the internet. Like, he was able to see the future. Yeah. I don't miss Dick Gregory like I would have, but he didn't do so many interviews.
Exactly.
Every time I did a movie or a documentary, Dick Gregory, how the hell, in this movie, did they connect Dick Gregory to this movie?
Everything. Omnipresent.
Yeah.
DNA's on everything.
Yeah.
There's not a movement that's rooted in love that he wasn't a part of.
Right.
I mean, his involvement every time you hear the song, John Lennon's "Imagine." Well, Dick Gregory was instrumental. He gave him the prayer book.
That's right.
That if you look in the Beatles book, that's what John Lennon credited. The inspiration for this song came from this prayer book and conversation I had with Dick Gregory. So we all have a role to play, man. We all have a role to play. John and Yoko. John and Yoko. I mean, he helped both of them.
Right.
He helped a lot of people get off drugs. He helped a lot of
people talked about it in his life.
Worked with him. And this is why I am not envious of the folks that have to try to tell his story. I mean, really, it really is not going to be any one. I mean, this story is because there's so many different tentacles. There's so many different directions it can go. But we want to make sure that the art is reflective of the man. We're not looking to sugarcoat. We're not looking to. It is what it is. He's always been wide open with it. But we want to make sure that the spirit is right. We want to make sure that the energy of it is right.
Like the term blues play, it's kind of rare for a person to be able to see their life story played out, before they, he was able to see that. What was his thoughts about it?
He saw it.
Yeah.
He loved it. Mm-hmm. I mean, which is hard. Joe Morton's on the record as saying the only difficult time it was for him to do that was, I mean, think about that, man. Someone's playing you, you're sitting in the front row, and you're a fiery old man at this point. It's like, wait a minute, this cat might get up and walk out, but you could have, or get on stage and say, wait a minute, let me show you how to do that, and no one would have told him no. But he was moved, deeply moved by it. Me as his son, and strongly protective and opinionated about people's storytelling of him.
Right.
I went and screened it before he came, just in case because if it was off, or would have said, hey, Pop, we're not even going. And he had enough respect for me that would say, okay, well, if this is going to be something that could make me feel a particular way, it was, you and I grew up in a day and age where half the rappers we grew up listening to became actors. Oh, this acting thing's easy. Anyone can act. It's like, hit me with a light, let's go. Watching what Joe Morton does in Turn Me Loose it gave me an understanding of what it meant to be an actor. And so I clearly said, no, I couldn't act. And matter of fact, most cats I grew up listening to who are actors can't act. It's like, this is acting. I mean, he transforms, and no props, no fake beard. He transforms into multiple generations of Dick Gregory, young Dick Gregory, mid-age Dick Gregory, old Dick Gregory, seamlessly, and makes it look effortlessly. But by the time it's over in the audience, you're exhausted. And I just thought, like, Joe needs to go get an IV and an oxygen mask. Like, how can he just give so much passion up there on that stage? It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And so for my dad to see that before he transitioned, which is awesome, that same team, the Turn Me Loose team, he made the decision after seeing that this is the team. And John Legend is the executive producer. This had made an incredible song as part of the soundtrack of the play. Just so many things, so many shoes just waiting to drop. That my dad decided, Dick Gregory decided, this is the team that he wants to do his life story. So they ultimately will be the team that puts the Dick Gregory film together. Will be that Turn Me Loose, John Legend group, Get Lifted. So things are already in motion. Things are shaping up, and it's going to be powerful, man. It's going to be powerful. It will be creative. It's going to have to be to fit so much into it. They almost need like a Forrest Gump type tempo to get through so much, because there's very few things in history when my dad was alive that he wasn't part of in some aspect, as you already referenced. So
this is the inspiration
for it.
For free or something he did when you helped with the Greenwood stuff.
When he reached in, and again, we're back to that universal spiritual trillionaire.
Right.
He vouched for to pay reward money that he didn't even have at the time.
Right.
So he had to go back to Hugh Hefner, and Hefner put the money together to give as a reward to find the bodies of the three boys, the three men. So all of that put in motion. The FBI was embarrassed, so they put up a reward the next day. Now, long before I was alive, the story as it was told by multiple people to me, that the call, the tip that came in, was a tip that came in through the Dick Gregory side of it that was forwarded to the FBI that ultimately led to where their bodies were buried. And so, no, I mean, just full. I mean, just life.
Just full. Bob Moses gave him credit for being the inspiration for freedom.
For freedom, yes, absolutely.
In addition to finding the civil rights workers.
Absolutely.
This is like incredible to me.
It's
even the protest of the Olympics or the Black Power fist in '68.
Played a role.
He protested in St. Louis 4 years ago.
And they saw it
earlier. He thought it'd make a difference. A.L.L was watching him.
And you know what? So after my dad passed, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wrote a nice piece in the LA Times. Said, I only met Dick Gregory once.
I gotta read that.
It's powerful, man. So I met him once, wasn't even 5 minutes, changed my life. The reason I'm here right now today is that 5 minute brief chance encounter I had with Dick Gregory on the street. He was heading to a rally. I was walking the other way to go to the crowd to watch the rally. He stopped and we talked. In that 5 minutes, if it was even that, I want to put words in Kareem's mouth. Go read the article. Powerful. Very powerful. Like exact word. He put it in the article. He said, I mean, it changed. He's crediting that 5 minute sidewalk exchange with changing his life. There was an article in the Washington Post here where they were interviewing all the cab drivers, and they were saying, what's the largest tip that you ever got? And so at the end of it, the takeaway was Dick Gregory is the biggest tipper in this town. And so, it just, when you pull up to the airport with them, sky caps would do backflips, man. They would drop, they would drop whoever, you talk about like powerful folks looking like, tripping, pushing the elbow in each other out, because he truly believed in not trickle down economics. He really paying it forward. And he spent more time in hotels and airports than he did at home. So there was time when my dad started getting older that you could tell his light was fading a little bit. Yeah. The moment we'd show up at a hotel or we'd show up at the airport, I'd say, we're going to need a wheel. Look, he's always halfway down. I'm like, it was just crazy. That was his oxygen, man. That was so. Those folks said the folks who are really hurt and didn't realize it. Sky caps, cab drivers, all those tipping dollars. I'd like to see their pre and post tax return. Dick Gregory here, Dick Gregory not here, but the amount of newspapers that were bought. Trees are actually celebrating the brother transition. I do tell my pops, the moment you no longer here, the trees are going to start smacking their branches and flapping their leaves, because this brother took out a lot of trees with his newspaper consumption. But it was just, it was to watch Dick Gregory go through a newspaper with a highlighter in hand. It was like a surgeon with a scalpel, man. He knew exactly, boom, boom, boom. I would just sit back and watch, he would get on a plane, they'd sit him right up in his first class seat, and they knew immediately to get a large trash bag and sit it over to him, because they knew that stack of papers was going to be whittled down to the meat, and all the rest of it they were going to be thrown away for him. I know it was he was home, man. He was home. I won't say the airline because it might get the brother in trouble, but one of the managers for one of the larger airlines here in DC said, oh no, man, it was an unwritten rule whenever, and this was all after my pop died. So just hearing all of this love, man, it really just was such a wonderful thing. He said it was an unwritten rule that all of us knew. If Dick Gregory's name was on a manifest to be on a flight, that flight didn't leave till the brother got here. He was like, if we had to, he said, this is a brother. He said, I would have to go down myself sometime and tell the check-in folks, you can go now. And be like, oh, senior manager coming down. And he said, the rules we had, if we need to go to a bathroom, We lock the door, close it. Sorry, there's no one else here to woman or man this pose, and I have to use the restroom. By law, under union, they would drag and delay. They'd be calling up the Sky Caps, hey, has Dick got here yet? When he done it? Just that, like, come on, man, this post 9/11, like that type of, I don't want to get the brother in trouble, but this is like, and that was just universal, man. The amount of Sky Cap, I mean, the amount of stewards that would just say, oh, whenever your dad was on a flight, we did. I mean, the flights would. Twice I was there when they brought a plane back to the gate after it already pulled back. It was just that because everyone. Oh, I mean, now this is pre 9/11. The post 9/11 is the delay, but twice there was. I mean, it just is. We were in Europe. We were connected. We were heading to either heading to Harare, Zimbabwe, or Accra, Ghana. And we were changing planes going from Heathrow to Gatwick. And so we jumped in a cab, went there. The pilots that were piloting our plane, and so it was a who's who. I mean, it was Coretta, Jesse, all the civil rights royalty there. And, these British pilots, the captain, co-pilot, and navigator all lost their mind when they realized that, A, that's Dick Gregory, B, he's about to be on my flight. And it just was, I mean, these middle-aged British cats just like lost their mind. Wow. I mean, it just is so, no, it's, he was clear, man. A lot of people say, hey, do you think, someone even asked me that recently, do you think your father realized, I know exactly who asked, it was rooted in love. Do you think your father realized how much love I tell him? I don't think, I know. And he loved it. I mean, he absolutely loved it. Folks talking and saying, I mean, it may have agitated him at that moment in an interview, never bothered him. He never came back and said, no, I really am agitated about it. Never. It's like, on to the next. And no matter, sure was fun, wasn't it? Give you a hug. And I mean, that just was how he operated, man. I mean, that was just how he operated.
Wow. Would you ever agree to like a hologram thing being done on your father? I mean,
look, man, the hologram would be on his Earth suit. You know what I mean? He may be shit the way he'll jump down in that hologram and take it over. So you agree at your own risk, because it's no, man. I just it's, and I commented on this when people got upset about Prince. About show business. Not everything that someone says is so literal. First, it wasn't. Look. If I was related to Prince, what they did there, that tribute, the city turning purple, man, that was spiritual, man.
They said this about Prince, like they say he disrespected Prince.
Oh yeah, and if you don't, that was bigger than Timberlake. I mean, that was. I mean, he was just a tool, man. He didn't design. I mean, hey, play the piano, sing this. He didn't bring that cape, man. He didn't hit the switch on that purple light. Awesome. Whoever was there, that was going to happen. That wasn't his brainchild. So I mean, you can't change who it is. And then the other thing is, they may have said something. They may have. I mean, this is what they do. These folks are professionals, man. I mean, it just is. It's hey, Justin Timberlake tried to poison Prince. That's a different story. It says, hey, there's folks out here who didn't like Michael Jackson. Okay, great. More for me to sit in the audience. So it's like, we can't be so thin-skinned. Oh, you said this about Prince. Oh, like there's some folks who have said, some of the comments about Dick Gregory and Malcolm, I went on to become great friends with after having a conversation with. I mean, we have to be responsible as adults to say, you can't put yourself in someone else. So yes, man. Oh man, I would. Not only would I love to see a hologram, I would want to be the voice of it, man. I mean, I do a great Dick Gregory impersonation. I know exactly what he's gonna say before he's gonna say it, man. But they just, if it's gonna be PG, I want no part of it, man. If it can't be live wire Dick Gregory, I'm not in. I won't even watch, man. I won't even watch. So, the Gregory family's upset. Not about the hologram, but the hologram's not lively enough. So I don't, because man, it's spiritual, man. Technology can't take over spirit, so it's cute. Oh, that's cute, isn't that? And so I wouldn't be up. And who knows where Prince's mind was when he said that, and what the totem. We take these little snippets and then we just hammer them down like they're hardcore facts. Like, Prince is gonna wake up and come back here and smack the shit out of everyone. But it's like, hey, who knows what he meant? But if it's not rooted in nastiness and viciousness, and it's rooted in love. If we could communicate, that's why I say, hey, how many times have you changed your mind? Like, hey, but my dad would always say, when people would say, hey, Brother Dick, you still a vegetarian? He said, it depends who's watching. So
I witnessed that. You're right about that.
It depends who's watching. Like, whatever you want. And that's why I don't even get caught up in some nights I'm a vegan, some nights I'm a carnivore. I'm a clean eater. The stuff that I eat food, I eat real food. So I'm not, I'm a vegan, but that, soy turkey that you're eating's got like 90 ingredients in it to make it taste. If you want something to taste like turkey, eat turkey. Manufactured food, Frankenstein food is Frankenstein food, even if it's vegan Frankenstein food. So, soy, ham, and all. It's like, wait a minute, it's a cruel trick, and our physiology is not for it. It doesn't play those tricks. It knows when something's been made in a laboratory as opposed to something that was alive and was once a whole food. So, but no, it used to be fun, and my dad had conversations I've had with friends. He definitely had issues around food, growing up so poor and being so malnourished. When people were around, he would always make sure everyone else ate plenty before he would even start. Now that I have the luxury to step back and look at it and put some space between it, you see these things, then you talk to other folks that knew him when he first made it big, and they'd say, Dick would go out with all the entertainers, would order so much food that he would kind of walk away. Like, it just is, at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have our own story, our own experiences, and it affects us all differently. Sometimes the loudest barking dog doesn't even have teeth, and the dog that's silent is about to tear your ass up. You just can't always say, well, because this is what you said, this is what you meant. We need to become more spiritual, less literal.
I'm glad you made those points, because I was thinking about Malcolm X. Now, people always use that Malcolm X little sound bite, but I spoke with people that work with Malcolm X, like A. Peter Bailey, who lives in
Okay.
And he would say something like, Malcolm was the type of person, like Lorraine Hansberry confronted him about saying something about her, and he realized that he wasn't wrong. He apologized.
Okay.
When information became available to him, he corrected his thoughts, and he was willing to apologize.
And that's the key thing, man. Information back there wasn't real time. They didn't have these devices we have. Yeah. They couldn't. I watched you say it on YouTube. No, that wasn't. It didn't work like that. So no, there was a lot of recalibration, man. We recalibrate in our life every day. Hey, I thought you meant this. Hey, that's actually a good. My dad would tell that. I really thought that was a good for nothing. Beep beep beep. He's a beautiful brother. Like, yes, I mean, that's life. And so again, we need to stop the death grip of just like, you said it, you must have meant it, you never could have changed your opinion. Life is fluid, it's living. We need to step back and allow it to play itself out, because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. We need to focus on the things that matter, and the most important thing is us doing our part to make the world a better place, not focusing on all the negativity, but focusing on the positive. I mean, the duration of my father's friendship with Malcolm X was beautiful. With Dr. King was beautiful.
Meg at 37,
lost
39,
all back to back, man, and lost his oldest son, Richard Jr. I mean, the 60s. This is something I'm writing about currently. The 60s were a difficult time for my father. There was a lot of loss, and I think that all of that loss that he endured and experienced, it changed his perception on life and death. So you can go back and historically look at him speaking at all of the funerals. James Brown funeral he spoke at. It was a who's who. Marvin Gaye. That's what I'm trying to think of. And Dick Gregory always had the ability to turn a funeral into a comedy show, man. That's unheard of. No one goes to a funeral to laugh. And so I've been there physically to watch folks crying because to look like, wait a minute, is it okay to start laughing right now? And then the whole place just lights up, man. It's Troy Davis funeral. I mean, so many of them are online, and it just is, it's a beautiful thing. So at his funeral, it was heavy because, wait a minute, the cat that normally has everyone laughing so we had to tell, man, the funeral, that's a whole nother day, another story. But that was, it was long. None were as long as roses. Like he said, you know, those beeps kept in there so long they couldn't even bury the body that night because all the dark they couldn't go to sleep because all the lights were out. So it is what it is, man. It is what it is. The spirit was felt. And everything. What someone wanted isn't necessarily always what happens. Exactly. The spirit kind of takes over. It was a beautiful, and I was ripping and running, micromanaging so many things. So it wasn't not too many folks that have to wait to watch their father's service on YouTube. But it wasn't until I went and YouTubed it later, and still even then had to break it up into sections because it was lengthy, that I got a sense of just the totality of it. But no, it's as my dad would always say, when they love you, they love you. When they love you, they love you. And he was clear. I feel good speaking with you right now knowing he was clear on that. He was absolutely clear on that.
Also, I want to ask you this, because stuff is for posterity now. Dick said a lot of controversial stuff, but honest things, how he was feeling at the time. The situation with Cedric the Entertainer, I know he repeated several times about his feelings about how Cedric, his talks about Rosa Parks and whatnot in the barbershop movie.
And so it's important that we first realize that it was a movie. So we have to, it's reckless to make it seem at all, not that you're doing that this is Cedric the Entertainer's feelings on these icons. It's not. I mean, but for someone who knew them personally, like my dad did, he couldn't see. It was a generation, not even a generation, it was a relationship thing. Exactly. And so, as I explained to my dad, you know, that Cedric didn't write the lines, ever do it. He was so hung up on that, he couldn't get past it. Now, here's the interesting thing. I had already started, because relationships and optics are important, and you know, there's too much negativity in our community. So anywhere I can show, hey, Brother Dick was able to work this out. So I had literally, the week before my dad passed, back-channeled, communicating to Cedric. And this was unilateral. Cedric never came out and said anything, you know, vicious or negative about my dad. This was you know, and really he had to, because I mean, that would have been disaster. To one thing be accused of saying things hard on King, and now to get into a dust up with Dick Gregory would be a horrible optic. So he did the same thing you or I would have did. He said, you know, it's not. I'm aware of it. I'm not going to acknowledge it publicly, because that just would have been I mean, I have a whole world of respect for Cedric and the position that he took towards it.
And you both St. Louis guys.
Yeah, both cats from St. Louis. Yeah. I am certain through conversations I had with my dad prior to that, he was aware of my efforts to reach out and kind of have a kumbaya moment where they would have came together and could have, you know, whether it's, hey, Cedric, donate this to the King, or donate, just, you know, my dad's a gesture and stunt man. So you do something like, there would have had to been something done to make it right. So my spirit is clear that my dad was open to that. And I've communicated it before, I'll communicate it again. Cedric needs to know, and I know he does know because I've already communicated, that my dad was open to that. He was open to burying that, which would have been hard for him to bury that hatchet, because he had been on the record so many times of saying it. So, but what a wonderful thing for, you know, young folks in conflict to say, hey, look, wait a minute. These two folks can work it out. So it would have been worked out. Absolutely. My dad transitioned knowing that would have been worked out. And it would have been worked out in only a way Dick Gregory could have pulled the strings to do it. The two of them giggling and laughing together, doing something meaningful. There would have been work involved with it, but it would have been meaningful. And so it would have, I don't even need to think it would have been wonderful. I know it would have. So I have to think what it would have looked like, because I've seen different versions of it play out. It would have been incredible. It's a shame, but you know, we're all. That's why I tell folks all the time: don't wait, man. If you got something, as we say, hey, give folks their flowers while they're living. My pops definitely got his. He was crystal. There were so many flowers coming to the room. He kept trying. Every time I came in, you know, check that. I said, hey, wait, the minister that sent you that, he might be here tomorrow. You guys, wait, you know, there's some politics involved in this here. Wait, you know, like, oh, where are the flowers? I've never been a flower person. Right. When you think about death and loss, it's one thing. But when you're involved in it, to know like, oh, this came from Muhammad Ali's family. Wow. This is from Lonnie. This is, and then the actual flower is just kind of a conduit to you channeling their energy and into it. But there was a lot of late nights, man. You know, by my pops, I was just deep thought and reflection and just saying, wow, this relationship was so powerful. This relationship was so powerful. It was deep, man. I haven't even fully, because although there's a business side to death, and we, unfortunately, our community doesn't do enough to prepare for it. And so conversations with my pop about his passing and his will and his wishes were always colorful, man. I mean, they were always short. They were at the weirdest of time. If you talked about it too, I'm like, oh, hold up, you must know some shit. Like it was, so you could let me go get a pad. Let's go. Whoa. So it was wild, man. And it took probably a good 10 years to gather what his energy, what his spirit is, and what his wishes truly are or were. And I'll say are because it's where he is now is definitely in Fort Lincoln Cemetery, a temporary resting place. We plan to move him within Fort Lincoln to a more befitting place. And there's talks and conversations about museums and others. I mean, honestly, when I used to meditate and for hours, the Gregory family would be around just sitting and just feeling it's becoming present. Just, you know, last year in this country was big for mindfulness. Now this year they're saying, oh, mindlessness. I don't need the year to tell me, be both mindful and mindless at the same time. Live. And so stop having so many, just sit, be still, be mindful, be mindless. They're both a wonder. It's a spectrum of life.
You saw what Pope said last night.
What did he say?
Disconnect and just sit silent.
Yeah, just sit silent. I mean, we got so, even when we're silent, we're not silent. I got to send that. I got to do that. Just really take the time to truly disconnect. And just, when I was in chiropractic school, I remember just putting my stethoscope on and just like going to bed every night, just listening to sounds that the human body makes and just marveling at how beautiful life is. It's precious. And most of us don't, you know, we consciously value it, but subconsciously we don't take good enough care of our mind, body, and soul. And we're a pretty sick nation, man. We're a pretty sick nation. At the end of the day, it's not how many degrees someone has, how many letters there are after their name or before their name. It is truly us taking care of us. And so, my dad was a master teacher, man. I mean, that's what he did. I mean, how many lives, folks, their lives and their quality of those lives are still here in such a beautiful way. Just what a blessing, man. Yep, what a blessing.
Oh, actually, one thing. I mean, you gave me, I didn't expect you to give me all this time. It's very, very beautiful for me to listen to you.
I appreciate it. And it needs to, I haven't really had the time to talk about it a whole lot because there's a lot of work going on right now.
You got a lot of things on your plate, but moves in your own personal life.
Correct.
Professional as well, too. The situation with, they talk about the funeral arrangements.
Correct.
I talked to your uncle, Dr. GREgory, about this, and the thing about it is, like, people, and you always have critics. Like, people said there were black funeral directors at home that were willing to do the funeral arrangements for your father for free, whatever like that. Why y'all didn't select them, or why y'all select the place to put his resting place in Fort Lincoln?
So that's a good question. And the only person who could probably answer that question is me, because I made all the decisions.
Okay,
so
right.
So all that make themselves available, just because someone makes, hey, I want the safest car out here. Well, they made this motorcycle available to you. Well, I don't want that motorcycle. Right. I said, this man had worked enough and was entitled to something that was truly befitting from A to Z. The love and care that was shown. So I interviewed a lot of places, and it was not more so who owned it, it's who was going to be doing the work, who was going to be handling the body, who was, this gives me it was a brother from Houston who reached out immediately, contacted former LSU basketball coach, Dale Brown. Dale put him in touch with my mom. He said, look, I have to make a custom casket for Dick Gregory. This brother made it. You know, we discussed arrangements because it was like, hey, I don't expect folks to gift anything. So it's once he showed me the picture of it, and you saw the passion that he had for the man, and this was around the same time the flood hit Houston, and so I was a little worried. So we had a backup plan, thinking, well, this brother might not. He got into a car, a massive truck, and then had his nephew with him, another truck, just in case it broke down, they needed to change. And they drove from Houston to DC and got here the day before. And so from the brother that made the custom casket to the husband and wife, the wife who was overseeing the funeral director, and the actual person that was embalming, the brother that was embalming and handling, oh man, I just can't, it was so off the meter. And then the location, my dad's a location person. When I first went to the cemetery, it was at night, and my dad always lived right near Rock Creek Park. We would look at the deer, we're out there, we're in nature. Dr. Dorothy Height was laid to rest right across where, like Bill Cosby said, oh, they're both, Bill can speak kind of colorful too. They're out there cutting up and two old friends having a good time. It's a disservice for anyone to second guess. I hope when anyone loses their parent, they're allowed to do what the spirit moves them to do, and what they feel. At that one, I mean, this man's been so uber accessible for a lifetime. For one moment to stand down and allow the family to do what they feel his spirit wants, which he may have said, Dick. So I encourage all comments. So first of all, there wasn't a single black female that reached out to me, and the whole town knew I was the one handling it. I mean, me and my dad were inseparable in this town. So for people to say after that, well, what we coulda, shoulda, woulda, no, this is real time. You're grieving. I'm getting medical records because I know there's going to be folks that ask questions about what Brother Dick taking. So this is a lot of work, man. I mean, this is a lot of work. So that wasn't even on my radar screen. I mean, there could have been people who, oh, how come you didn't go to Howard University Hospital, or how come you didn't go to this? This town, and being a healthcare provider in this town, if my dad if I knew at the time it was a cardiovascular issue, we would have went to Washington Hospital Center, because they're the leading hospital here that deals with cardiovascular health. Had it been trauma, Howard University has one of the leading in the area shock trauma centers. So it's not all of these things are the same. And so the decision was made, especially since we thought we were dealing with we went to some place that the initial portal of entry was almost like a urgent care center, but we didn't realize it was an emergency at that point. And then as things evolved, and now in hindsight, man, I wouldn't change a thing. No, I wouldn't. Everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. And this picks up on some of what I was saying is, we have to stop being so hypercritical and focus on the thing. Half the people that are talking about it don't even know where to find a black funeral home if they had to. And so it's like, everyone's got their 2 cents, but it was the funeral, the cemetery side, and the funeral home side, which is absolutely it was divine intervention. I mean, the love there I say this a lot, but it was palpable, it was real. This wasn't a sale to them. Because it's a business, man. We don't think of the business side of death. It's procedural. And the folks that were there in that room on the very first day, they made it so profoundly easier to sit and just to have a group of folks surround you by love and say, hey, look, this is what we do. You allow the hospital to do what they did, allow us to do what we do. I have nothing but glowing reviews for Fort Lincoln Cemetery, for Fort Lincoln Funeral Home. My dad's there amongst friends. Many people visit his gravesite. I know you've been there temporarily. He's moved somewhere else. He's not there right now, so he's at another place temporarily as we pull it together. But man, he's up here, man. He's everywhere. I mean, he's in here channeling his voice in this interview. And that if he was here and said, "Oh, well, Dick, why you driving Mercedes?" Why? Oh, he let you have it. You know, it's like we always want to hold other folks to a different standard. You know, these folks they've already done enough work. They've already let them sit back on the work that they've done. You know, and it was a tremendous amount of pressure, man. I joke with folks and say, "Hey, look, you can get married multiple times. Someone can have 8 weddings. You only get 1 funeral. You better get it right the first time, because you can't say, hey, we're going to redo that, and we're going to redo that." So that was a heavy amount of pressure, man. I mean, it was a tremendous amount. It was, I wore it like a badge of honor, but it was a tremendous amount of pressure because you only have 1 chance to get that right. And it was phenomenal. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal.
The whole weekend.
It was from the parade. And my dad loved marching bands, and he loved parades. And so to have that funeral procession, and I mean, it was all divine. I mean, I sound like a broken record, but the band, and I'm ashamed of myself that I'm forgetting their name, but the band, which was a Howard University band, they just made themselves available. Everything. It was just, hey, I think I had Joe Madison, the Black Eagle. He said, well, no, I heard this band, and he put me in touch with it. I mean, it was things were connected. Normally it takes a week or 2 to get permits to shut the city down for a parade. Oh, the mayor's office, Mayor Bowser's office, they stepped right in, and they did. I mean, 24 hours, we had everything set up for the parade. People said, oh man, you must have been planning for this for weeks. And so, no, it was the love in this city. And originally we were going to have my dad's service at the Kennedy Center. So there were a lot of Washingtonians that were upset, or it was a few, some important Washingtonians that were upset that it got relocated to Prince George's County. But DC, PG, Montgomery, this whole DMV tri-state area was what my dad considered home. So it was actually fitting that it was kind of spread out, and it gave everyone more space to do what they needed to do. But it was miraculous, man. It was absolutely miraculous, and we've all learned a ton by the man, from the man, and from that 3-day, it was a roadmap for other folks. Say, you know, live your life right, and what a joy. I could hear my dad's voices. What a joy, what a treat, and what a blessing to see all of this lay out the way that it did. And I know a lot of people don't know this. My dad got his start in entertainment singing and playing the bongos. So before he became a comedian, he used to sing it. Oh, there's some pictures of him. I don't have any recordings of his singing, but there's some pictures of him on the stage. You know, that's not Dick Gregory, is it? And so, no, young Dick Gregory, young Richard Claxton Gregory earned his stripes in a whole multitude of ways before he got refined to the chisel that he ultimately became, man. The laser-sharp, laser-focused chisel that he ultimately became, man. No, so this was good, my friend. This was very good. You were quite welcome, brother. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you so much. We love you.
God bless, man.
All right.